Are you okay? I am waiting for Francis to give me the green light.
There you go.
All right, Francis is ready. We can start. Meeting is called to order. Welcome everybody to our humble PRNC Neighborhood Council meeting. And let's start with Pledge of Allegiance. All right, let's begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, would you call the roll?
Yes, Brandy. Susan.
Here.
David.
Here, what would you
You. Jason.
Here.
Mara.
Yes.
Becky.
Yeah.
David.
Here.
Lori.
Here.
Assad. Yes. Gabriel here. Isam. Here. And we have a form.
Thank you. Mrs. Treasurer, do we have a financial report?
I just went on the dashboard and printed what everyone else can see as far as our total. The outstanding is $12,569.95. Net available $69,20.04. Now keep in mind there are some things I haven't gotten into the system yet, so I can't see exactly what's being held. But there were some things that were approved, like the birthday, 5,000, there was 7,500 for the median, things like that. So we can also roll over 10,000 at the end of the year, but we need to do our budget before that. So something we need to start thinking about that. I know we're talking about the retreat, but if we could get a budget approved, that would be a good idea to start thinking about that now, because the fiscal year is going to be coming to an end soon. But once we get the cardholder approved, that will allow access to the system. The bank card will take another couple of weeks to come. So right now, the expenses for Earth Day are going to have to be board member reimbursements until that debit card comes. So that's pretty much what's going on.
Okay, any questions for the treasurer?
Yeah, Jason,
Yeah.
when we spoke to the city, are they allocated, were they gonna let us have two cards or two names or one name, or what do we have on that?
As far as I know, it's one, but did they say they were thinking of changing, or?
You know, I was just looking at the rules that Dunn sent us yesterday or 2 days ago, and I specifically looked for that item, and it did not mention two cards, it just said one card holder. So, that we can wake up, that dream is a dream.
It's a dream you're right there. Thanks, Jason.
Any other question for Jason? Any public question or comment to the treasurer about the financial report? All right, thank you, Jason. Item 6, presentation from representatives of elected officials or city departments. We have Jared and we had Mr. Tam.
Yes.
Thank you.
And?
You got me.
Colin too. Anybody else? Mr. Tam, go ahead.
Okay, very good, thank you. Nice to be here, folks. I'm Daniel Tam. I'm with the LA department. I don't really need this, but I'm gonna use it anyway. Can you hear me?
You need to turn it on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Ah,
Let's start again. I'm Daniel Tam. I'm here from LA Sanitation. Hi, Brandy. LA Sanitation and Environment. Here we're basically the lead agency for all the city's environmental and public health concerns, as well as all the initiatives and the programs oriented to that. As an example, Mayor Garcetti's very ambitious goal of reaching 100% recycled water by 2035 will go through LA Sanitation and Environment. We're working on that right now. The technology actually exists. It's a matter of really scaling it up and getting it to be perfect. So that's going to take time. Nonetheless, those are the kinds of things we work on. I'm here to invite you to Earth Day. Many of you have already received one of these. We're going to be celebrating Earth Day right down at Woodley Park 1, not far from here. Well, everything's far from here. But just sort of like follow gravity going that way to Woodley Park 1, and free parking, free admission, free food while the supplies last. Entertainment, sustainability and conservation workshops as well. This is for all ages, so there can be a lot of great stuff for kids. The other day, I had the honor of being among the judges of the art contest from a middle school, and about the greening of Los Angeles, preserving the future of preserving our future. And these kids were just incredible. There was just some really imaginative, creative work that they've done. So that's going to be going on. Also, a free tree and plant giveaway is going to be happening as well. It's going to be loads of fun. You're all invited. The other thing I just want to mention is that for students, must be a high school senior or junior in fall of 2019, or a high school graduate starting first year of college in fall of 2019. These are paid 6-week internships. They're summer introduction to engineering and science programs. I'm going to leave these over back here on the in the back, and I'm going to give one to you right now, Mr. Caladri, because I know what your focus is. So by all means, spread the word, okay? And that's all. I just was really happy to have this opportunity to introduce myself and the LA Sanitation and Environment. Looking forward to, down the line, partnering with you on a number of initiatives that are coming down the pike for a better environment and protecting the public health. Thanks very much.
Can I ask you, if you don't mind, a question? I'm going to be a little selfish here.
Sure.
I realize this is by your Balboa plant and
Yes.
and your
DC Tillman.
right. So that's great. I just want to ask you, for any future events, consider doing something here. We have a fairly large park in Port Ranch, and we would love for the department to, any of your future events, that public events, talk to Parks and Rec, and let's do it in our park. That would be fantastic for us.
I will put that word in by all means.
And we will help you market it as much as we can.
All right, splendid.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your time, everybody. And thanks for all that you do.
Mr. Crew.
Sir. Hey everybody, I'm Colin Cruz, Senior Field Deputy for Councilmember Greg Smith. It's been a minute since I've seen you guys. It's good to see everybody. Very, very belated Happy New Year, because it's been that long. I just got a couple of quick events. Tomorrow night is the annual Tip-Top event, fundraiser for Devonshire Division. It's at the Claim Jumper at the Northridge Mall. It's not in the mall, it's in the parking lot outside the mall. It starts at 5 o'clock. So all of the gratuity, you'll have your officers waiting on you, and all the gratuity will go to support Devonshire Division. It's a great event. Some of y'all, all of y'all can make it out. Also, we have an Earth Day event coming up this Saturday at Limecombe Canyon Park in conjunction with the YMCA. It's our annual event. We've been doing it for forever. Registration's at 8:30. Cleanup starts at 9. Goes until about noon, and we're expecting a really good turnout for that. And I hope to see some of you there. Last but not least, and this is just for the board and your committee members, our office is offering a Budget 101 workshop. And that is going to be on Saturday the 27th at 1 to 3:30 at Northridge Middle School. We've done these before in the past. It's just a really educational experience to go through the city budget, see how everything is broken out. You have a chance to adjust the budget as you would think it should be adjusted, and see how things have to come out of this end to go to that end. It's just very informational, very illuminating as to how the budget works. Yes, sir.
Tip of cop. What time?
5 till closing, yeah, or at least I think 11, something like late. It goes on for a while. Yeah.
I have a question. Is the registration at the bottom of Warrington on, what's that street?
At the Korean church.
The Christ Church.
In Christ.
Rinaldi.
Rinaldi, yeah.
In Christ.
Yeah, it's a great, we do that event every year. It's always a great turnout.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the neighbor council is sponsoring food for afterwards.
Baja Fresh.
Baja Fresh.
Fresh. I just was there the other day.
On Saturday, 3 p.m.
That's all I've got. If anybody has any questions?
The budget thing
Yeah.
is on the city budget, obviously, right?
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, city budget. So you're breaking out the city budget to see where the resources go, how, and again, it's kind of cool that you have the opportunity to be like, well, I think we need more money here, and then you see where it breaks out on the other side, what would, what you'd have to pull away from, because, the budget is the budget. There's a set amount of money, and you gotta allocate resources where you think the priorities are. So it's a really cool thing. I've been to a couple of them before. We don't do them very often because they are logistically challenging, but here we go, end of the month. All right?
Colin?
Sir?
Can you confirm if the surveys for speed are back in order, that they're active for Rinaldi and Reseda?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if they are or not.
We had another major collision near my house, the car was overturned, skidding on its roof, and I don't know the injuries, but it's not the first, won't be the last, but I'm not seeing, compared to what it was 5 or 6 years ago before the surveys expired, I'm not seeing the presence back in now that the surveys are current and accurate. I think they are.
Has the speed limit gone up?
Went down.
It went down?
On Reseda went from 45 to 40, from 50 to
Then
45.
then I would,
Rinaldi.
then by that information, I would think that the study is in. Yeah.
That's true, that's right, the sign change had to be.
Yeah, typically, and that's really good news, because typically the speed limits go up after the speed.
But I don't think Rinaldi has been done.
I'm not sure Rinaldi definitely received money, but what does it take to get those voters back? Because it's really, Saturday, I was telling there was a guy doing test laps at 90 miles an hour in Ferrari with a different passenger each time, going from Reseda and Rinaldi, all but assessed on, all the way back down at 89 miles an hour, this passenger just screaming in delight, and then you
Okay.
change and do it again. And
Well, let me talk to our public safety deputy. Obviously, that's an LAPD resources issue. But I'll let him know that that was going on, and we'll see if we can't get some more patrol.
that'd be great, thank you.
Sure. Anyone?
We have a new captain in the deputy.
We do. I have not had the honor of meeting her yet.
Sweet lady, very sweet lady.
I haven't met her yet, yeah. But that's, lots of changes going on.
Ron, you had a question?
No, just a card, I was gonna ask you.
Oh, okay, will do.
All right.
All right, thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Hello, Jerry Gagoni on behalf of Supervisor Catherine Barker. We do, obviously, the health study is on the agenda, so I'm not going to talk about that during government report, but I will stay for that presentation to answer any questions that are specific to Supervisor Barker and the board after health gives their presentation. But I do have 3 items that may be of interest for the neighborhood council. On April the 16th, there is a hearing taking place at the Chatsworth Courthouse regarding a motion for summary judgment against the person that is running an illegal landfill operation in unincorporated Chatsworth off Browns Canyon. Chatsworth Neighborhood Council obviously has been paying a lot of attention to this, as have our unincorporated communities in the northwest San Fernando Valley, but I know this is of interest for Porter Ranch as well. Motion for summary judgment means basically we were ready to go full steam ahead for a full trial in May, a full civil trial in May. Because of some new allegations regarding a continuation of the illegal landfill operation, we've decided we've compiled enough evidence that we are going to ask the judge to ask the judge via motion of summary judgment to go ahead and issue judgment now on April 16th. We have asked community members to attend these hearings in the past. We do think that it has worked by providing providing, by basically showing that there's a lot of concern in the community in regards to this operation. So if you have an opportunity, 9 o'clock, April 16th, Chatsworth Courthouse. I cannot remember the department number, but I will get that if you're interested.
The defendant's name is gonna be covered in the docket, what's his name, I can't remember his name.
Wayne Fishback.
Thank you.
It's the Fishback case. A name that we should not speak. But yes, it is the Wayne Fishback case. We are moving forward with design work on a new equestrian park again in Browns Canyon and unincorporated Chatsworth. And once we start the construction on that, and we have a construction timeline, I'm sure we'll be doing a ribbon cutting. And I will notify the neighborhood council when that is to take place. That actually technically is in closer proximity to Porter Ranch than it is Chatsworth. It's just easier to get to from Chatsworth than it is Porter Ranch, but I still think there would be a lot of opportunities for the neighborhood council and community members to utilize that new park. And then the last thing, other than Brad Pitt being at the Board of Supervisors meeting yesterday, he touched my shoulder, so him and I are best friends now. The board did adopt a
That's
motion.
scary.
I
Oh, dude, it's kind of creepy. Go ahead.
Why was it there?
There
Touch
was
the
a,
shoulder.
yeah, such a, for me, no. There was a motion at the board yesterday regarding the LA County Museum of Modern Art and the new facility and the new building, and Brad Pitt was there in support of the new concept and the new building and testified to that effect. I don't see a lot of activity, nor does TMZ often come to the board. And, they were there. It was quite interesting.
Jared, before you leave the Brown Canyon Park, I'm curious, which side of Brown Canyon Road is that park?
Closest to the Port Ranch side, so the east side.
Okay.
East side of Browns Canyon Road. It actually.
All of it?
All of it. I take that back, Eastland. There is a small sliver of property that is across the street from Browns Canyon. We do have a small sliver that's part of the same property. So there are some portions that are on both sides of the road.
I'm asking only because we need to clarify, if that's a common public property that is common to Chatsworth Neighborhood Council and Gwinnett Neighborhood Council, then we gotta do the same that we did with the Granada Hills North Council, that there's common public space in both neighborhood councils, so that's why I'm asking.
The closest neighbor to this park is the new KB development. That's under construction right now. Yeah, that would be the current closest neighbor. There was another motion adopted by the Board of Supervisors yesterday having to do with mental health. And it allocated $4.5 million to hire 45 new mental health professionals to form 10 mental health teams that are going to work very specifically with our school districts. LA Unified being the first primary identified school district, is obviously is the largest in the county. We had a couple school board members and the superintendent come testify. This was Supervisor Barker's motion. And she's a strong component and strong believer in increasing our mental health resources and increasing our mental health teams. It is her hope to increase that number further in the future once we have a better idea of what our budget looks like going in the next year or two. But we thought this was a good start to increase the teams by 10, hiring 45 new professionals at a cost of $4.5 million. We think there is a long-term benefit to this. If we can identify and work with our schools on youth that are in need of mental health services, that could save the county actually money in the long run in terms of adult outreach and preventing people from experiencing some of those issues associated with mental health issues. So we think this is a good investment for our school districts, but we also think this might be a good investment long term for the county as well. Yes, David?
Is there a website for mental health workers to apply?
The county has a general HR website, but I believe mental health probably has their own standalone, so I'll make sure I send it. I'll find out if they do, and I will send that along.
That's wonderful. That's great news.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, LAUSD has its own mental health departments that are available to, a lot of it's low income, but also anybody. And how, are they gonna work in conjunction?
Yes.
Okay, and then did that pass? You said it's a good bill, but did it pass?
5-0.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'm kind of on the lines of questioning. So essentially, let's say there's a counselor here at the school, identifies a child in need, then they would refer out to the county. Is that, how does the interaction work between the county?
It could be both, Jason. I think what the vision is that yes, the counselor could refer to our mental health teams, and then that team with the counselor could evaluate that student to determine what resources the county has or what resources the district has to make sure that we have the two entities talking to each other and provide that service. But it also could be the mental health service worker that identifies it and reports it to the school,
Right.
and then therefore they go through that. I don't know how the laws relate in terms of privacy for students. I'm not familiar with that, but I do know that that was the vision.
Well, I want to, commend the supervisor. You're absolutely right, that's a great investment, that's money well spent, because these, like you said, if we start early, now's the time you can save these kids from falling into. So the district, from what I hear in the school, Castle Bay, they only have a counselor 3 days a week, and their caseload is just tremendous. So any resources that they can get is desperately needed, and I think it's gonna save them from ending up in jail and, down a bad path, so good job.
Thank you, Jason. Penny?
So she has a heavy focus on this issue, especially when it comes to children with special mental issues. I'm hoping maybe somebody from your office might be interested in, everything's happening on April 27th, but that same day is the Autism Walk, sponsored by Autism Speaks.
Okay.
So you might want to.
I will definitely take a look at it.
I can send you more.
Please do. That'd be great. All right, I'll stick around.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
One more question.
One more.
One more
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry, yes.
I'm Robert Krantz, and I work with the company that was running the Open Path, the methane monitoring independently for a couple of years. And I know that you guys are organizing the health study, but I was wondering about how do we apply the bid to build a system for an independent system for the fence line system that was allocated in the last.
That's a very good question, but outside, actually, we have money set aside for that. That's outside the health study. Part of the law, part of the settlement with SoCal Gas, and part of that $119.5 million included $3 million for permanent air monitoring.
Right.
And we've been discussing internally within the county, and Susan chaired the ad hoc committee, Lisa Payne, the ad hoc committee. How do we want to utilize that $3 million? I think the neighborhood council and other community stakeholders have made it pretty crystal clear that there's not a lot of faith or trust in AQMD to run it, and so we have not approached AQMD for that $3 million. The county itself does not have an infrastructure to be able to do the air monitoring itself. So what is happening behind the scenes right now, and I know Susan, you and I will probably touch base later and have a committee meeting to discuss further if you would like. But the county is right now working behind the scenes to look at our procurement process, to contract that out to an independent operator and utilize it that way. And that's what they're doing right now. And before we move forward with that RFP, I'm sure we're going to want to talk to either the ad hoc committee or I'll come back to one of the neighborhood
I
council.
would just come through the whole board, and secondly, you want to go out for requests for bids?
The hope is not to. The hope is not to. Because we know that the current operator has a lot of faith in the community itself, and so we want to be able to utilize that. But I think that's what the county is trying to do right now, county health is trying to look at its RFP process, its procurement process, so we can do a sole source.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other city official? All right, let's move on to item number 7, public comment on matter not on the agenda within the purview of the board. I have a report from Ms. Maloney. Would you please? Who else would like to give a public comment? One. Who else? All right. 3 minutes, good? All right.
Hello, everyone. Oh, is this too loud?
Perfect.
Okay. Very nice to meet all of you. I'm Stella Maloyan. I'm a candidate for LA City Council District 12. And I wanted to come here and introduce myself to all of you. I am an Armenian immigrant from Iran. I have lived in District 12 for the past 40 years. And for the past 20 years of my life, I have fought for working families, helping pass comprehensive campaigns to lift hundreds of thousands of people out of poverty. Every one of the campaigns I have fought for have had a good green component to them, meaning good union jobs with good green jobs, where it makes it very powerful and then real change happens. Gender equity lens is what I've fought for throughout the past 40 years of my life. And it's time to create change in Los Angeles City Council with only 2 women on the council. I am very committed to address homelessness and affordable housing in our neighborhoods and in our district. I'm going to work very hard to make our district relevant to the wider city of Los Angeles, something that has been missing for the past many, many years. I feel you need 3 things to win this campaign among the crazy race of 15 candidates, and that is commitment to get boots on the ground. I'm the one candidate with the most labor endorsements, Unite Your Local 11, Teamsters 396, and I'm building on that. I have the endorsement of Senator Maria Elena Durazo. I have endorsement of many powerful feminist sisters of mine in the city of Los Angeles, and I am all for community. And I feel that I can make history by being the first Middle Eastern woman on Los Angeles City Council ever. And thank you for your time, and I hope you will come to my campaign office in Northridge and meet with me. I would like to learn more from you, and I would like you guys to get to know me better. Thank you.
I'll talk from here.
Okay.
Very quickly, I'm Judith Daniels from Chatsworth Neighborhood Council. This Sunday from 11 to 3 is the 16th annual Chatsworth Neighborhood Council Day of the Horse. It is a totally free event for the public, not for the neighborhood council, of course. There will be all sorts of horse performances. There will be horses around that people can go up and touch and see that a horse is something, is a live thing, not just something on TV or in the movies. There are for children, there is a special class for kids to make stick horses, and then they go out and have a stick horse race, which is always one of the highlights. There is free food, and there's pretty much everything about horses other than, I have something I say, there is no riding of horses, because that would be a big liability and really long lines. There are a few flyers on the table back here. If you're interested and you don't find the flyer, find me, or Google Day of the Horse, and hope to see a lot of people. There's remote parking at the Chatsworth Train Depot. The event is actually at a horse ranch that is along Topanga, the top of Topanga, but the access is actually on Andorra, which is the next street east of Topanga. There's remote parking at the Chatsworth Train Depot with free shuttles running from the north side of the train depot every 15 minutes, the whole time the festival is open.
Judy, I know this is public comment, but I would like to make a comment. I look forward to the day when the Puerto Ranch Neighborhood Council would co-sponsor and work with you on that day. I think it is a shame that we don't work together on those two, on that specific issue.
So we just had our selection a little less than a month ago, and we have some new people who are on the equestrian committee, including there will be a new chair. Actually, I think the equestrian committee is meeting right now. They're going to have a new chair, and if you want, I will put the two of you in touch, and you could talk about maybe for next April.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
It's this Sunday from 11 to 3.
All right, we have a chameleon who just changed his colors.
I'm in blue. So for all of you that do and do not know me, I'm David Balin, and I am the only write-in candidate for CD12. Okay, I did not quit. I did come in short on my ballots. I will always fight for this community. Ever since the gas blowout, I was one of the few people that spoke up. There were a handful of people that spoke up. I personally brought in Eric Brockovich and Whites and Luxembourg and had that town hall. I will continue to fight with the other community members on shutting down Aliso Canyon. That's one of my big things. We need to make sure that we have public safety and proper public health. I'm an advocate for safety. I sit on CPAB along with other members that sit on the board with me. I also sit at the board at PRNC Community School. I work tirelessly hours with the city of Los Angeles on behalf of education for the children. And now we're moving into a whole new realm of safety for our schools, as it's being propositioned by our city councilman, as well as, with our city attorney. So there is a huge push for safety for our children. So once again, stay tuned. I'm going to bring up a lot of hot issues that our other candidates are not talking about, and we're going to bring everything to the forefront for this campaign, because we need to put somebody in this office for CD 12 that's going to do right for this community. Thank you.
Any other public comment? All right. Let's move to item 8. Item 8 is a discussion and possible action to respond to the request by the LA County Department of Public Health to provide 2 nominations for community representatives and 1 nomination for an alternate to serve on the Health Study Community Advisory Group. Now, in the packet that the board has, and there's a public copy of it in the back, there is an email that we received from Dr. Mandy Bain with this request. So the request is reproduced here on this packet. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to hear from Dr. Mandy, she's here, and get her vision for what it is that this request is. And then we're going to have a discussion about this request and any reasonable actions that we need to take in response to it. We will see what comes out. So with that, Mandy, please.
Thank you. And thank you to those of you who came out to our orientation sessions. It was great to see several of you there, and also a lot of the folks here in the audience from the community. So we're handing out a little bit of what would be a presentation related to today's request. I also, on this small table in the back, put some of the handouts that are left over from the orientation session. So if you weren't able to attend, there's information there in general about what the health study is, and a little bit about the community advisory group, which is what I'm here to talk to you about today. So just as a general recap, there's the settlement that provides $25 million to do a health study. The Department of Public Health will administer that study, and we will work with a scientific oversight committee, and they will be handling those science decisions. And then we'd also like to form a community advisory group. So the way the community advisory group, as you'll be able to see in your handout, has several responsibilities, but essentially the way I understand that community advisory group is to be able to make known the issues and concerns of the community, and then also to be able to help sort of figure out what's the best way to get the information that comes out of the study back to the community. So we don't want the scientists to just come in, do their science, publish it in journals that none of us can access or understand, but we want to make sure that that science gets done and presented in a way that is most helpful to the community. And if there are issues that we can, apply some resources to help with the community recovery, that's the vision that I have for this community advisory group. So the structure of the community advisory group is, first we have some dedicated seats for neighborhood councils in this area. Porter Ranch, as the closest neighborhood council, you have 2 seats reserved for this neighborhood council on that community advisory group. So what we're asking today, that we'll get to later, is that you would nominate those 2 representatives and an alternate so that we can make sure we always have your 2 folks there, 2 seats represented. So there will be a total then, the 2 from Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council and 5 other neighborhood council seats. That will form sort of the core of the community advisory group. And then there will be up to 13, so we can have up to 20 members of the community advisory group. Those other 13 would sort of be from at-large constituencies. So anybody in the community can nominate somebody for that seat, for a seat on the community advisory group. And so on our website, we will very soon have the nomination form, so people can nominate and anybody who they think would be a good representative of the community. And then those core members from the community, from the neighborhood councils, will help us select those up to 13 other seats, depending on how much interest there is. The only real restriction is that you can't be an employee of SoCal Gas. I think we're requesting a 1-year commitment, and then, hopefully folks will want to see the project through longer and stay, but at least if we can get folks for 1 year, and then we'll have to maybe have a process of continuing to add more folks in. So that's essentially why we're here then, is to request, will the Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council decide to participate in the community advisory group? And if so, we'd like you to nominate 2 representatives and 1 alternate.
Okay, let's ask you some questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
On clarifications. It says here, invitations to participate to be sent in March 2019. I assume those have not been sent?
No.
Okay.
So that was basically the email. I think we've,
No, I'm looking at the
Sure.
slide.
yes, I think that was our lofty vision, and then it became an email.
The concept of 2 members and an alternate. Last time, when we talked about the hashtag for the APMD, the idea of an alternate was a concern because this person, let me rephrase the question. Will the alternate sit at all the meetings but simply not participate? Or will the alternate simply be called in if the member, one of the 2 is not available?
I think it would be the latter. We haven't fully discussed that. I think from discussions with neighborhood council leaders, they suggested having an alternate, so we agreed to do that.
But you can see the problem. If the alternate hasn't been engaged in 7 months and then he was called in on the 8th month meeting, how valuable is that contribution? So I would suggest you reconsider the concept of the alternate and whether the alternate, like a jury alternate, is simply there but not participating in the voting if there's any voting or things like that. That way they will be informed. Now, it takes someone who actually wants to spend their time and not vote to be there, but that's the definition of the job. So that's a suggestion.
Thank you.
David?
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, the alternate, I mean, he could or could not be there, but it would be their responsibility to at least be on the minutes. Yeah, I think they could be, if you stay on top of the minutes, an alternate would have, enough knowledge to step in if that were the case. So I think that would be up to the alternate to either sit there quietly or at least be on top of the minutes.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Randy and then Sven.
I just want to confirm on numbers, because this here says 1 nominee, 1 alternate. This one says 2
No.
nominees, 1 alternate. This one says 1 nominee and 2 alternates. What are we looking at?
Sorry. So for Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council, it's 2 representatives and 1 alternate. Yes, for everybody, all the other neighborhood councils, it's just 1 representative and 1 alternate.
Becky?
Will these meetings be public meetings? And will they follow the Brown Act?
They will not follow the Brown Act. They will be open to the public. And I think that there will be some,
It's on page 2, open
Yes.
to the public and viewable online.
there you go.
Open to the public, I'm sorry.
Viewable online at the bottom of
Webcast.
page 2.
So can we require the alternate to attend the meeting?
It's just a, I just gave a comment about the alternate. I'm sure there are multiple ideas. I don't know which one they're gonna go with, but there are different ways to do it. It depends how they are comfortable doing it.
Yeah, the suggestion actually for the alternates was that it helps with the succession, so you have your one representative now and the alternate's kind of like
I don't
on
dispute
the
that.
waiting list.
My only comment is about the engagement of the alternate,
Yeah.
that's all.
I appreciate that.
And I just, my only concern is that the number 3, that's our magic number. Anything over 3 is a meeting, so we have to be careful.
Well, those are,
If-
the
if you're
members
all-
are not necessarily neighborhood council members.
Well, I know, but if 3 members of the neighborhood council are there representing the same neighborhood council, where does the number 4 come in? It's just something to think about.
But on your board, 3 is okay, and there will only be, but if
There's
there's
4,
one,
it's a
there won't be
plus.
4.
It's
Well-
just
One alternate, right?
3 for us. That's it, 3 for us.
I think Becky's getting at somebody sitting in the audience.
If someone from the neighborhood council is sitting in the audience, will they be,
It would help.
would they be able to speak?
It would
I got it,
count for
I got it, okay. Just a minute, let me go through the board. Go ahead.
How often are the meetings and what day are the meetings?
We haven't set the day, so when we have the nominees, we'll probably go through a process to find out when the right best time would be available. I think we envision 4 meetings for this coming year, and then after that, we'd have to see what the schedule is.
That's quarterly.
It's, yes, I mean, we're already in April, so it'd be probably one in May, and then I think either June, July, it'd be more than quarterly, yes, for this year. And then probably after that, I think it would be more spread out.
Jason?
Okay, couple of logistical questions. So you're gonna generate a nomination form, and then would you rely on us to, because we're the one nominating, right? So is it gonna be like us distributing the nomination form and outreaching to the community that we're looking, or is it going to be like the county taking the nomination forms in and then forwarding it to us? Just kind of a maybe you haven't figured that out, but just a logistical question on how that would work.
Yeah, so the nomination form is a little different for the neighborhood council representative versus the sort of at-large representative. So for the neighborhood council representatives, we would like you to just give us the names of the people that you would like to be on that advisory group. We'd probably still have them fill out the form online, so we have all of their contact information.
So we don't necessarily need to go through that nomination form process.
Correct.
We can go through our own.
Absolutely, yeah.
But we also can nominate members of the community, not necessarily board members. So
Certainly.
it's kind of, okay.
Right, so
that's fine.
it doesn't have to be a member of your board who sits on the
Right.
community advisory
Exactly.
group, absolutely.
Okay, and then, so there's, and I heard you say something like, they're gonna have like 4 people first from the neighborhood councils, and then they're gonna decide, maybe you meant to say 7, but let's say, explain that, and then can you explain the other members of the group? So you have 7 neighborhood council members, and then it's a total of how many members and what the other members are gonna be, how that works?
Sure, so we are asking Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council and 5 other neighborhood councils
Right,
if they would like to participate. I don't know that all of them
Right.
will,
it's Chatsworth, Granada Hills North, Granada Hills South, Northridge East, Northridge West.
yes. So if all of those neighborhood councils, yes, decide to participate, then there will be this kind of core group of 7 folks representing the neighborhood
Right. Or
councils.
let's say 4 to 7, depending on how much. So
Absolutely,
you're trying to get to 4, at least.
at least 4 would
Okay, all
would
right,
be
I'm
great.
with you. And then what about the other?
So then we can have up to a total of up to 20.
Okay,
So those other, up to 13 nominations could come from anybody.
so that's your form, like.
That's the
submit
form
to
that will be
county
online.
Educators or other
So,
industry people.
yes, absolutely, anybody, can fill out the form. So if you're a member of a faith-based group or a community service organization, you can nominate someone from your group. You could just nominate yourself. And then we are going to ask those neighborhood council representatives that are forming the CAG to go through a process of selecting from all of those nominees. If we get 100 people who want to be on the community advisory group,
Okay,
that, we want those 7 neighborhood council reps to help select folks who are really going to represent this section of the valley.
okay, well, it sounds good.
Any other questions? Okay, let me open the floor. You raise your hand, so please go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if it's in here, and I appreciate all the explanation, because I had all those questions too, Jason. But, how, you said about 4 meetings this year, and then they'll be spaced out next year. What other, is it just this group of 20 or less? Is there input from other agencies, doctors, health officials, county, all that? Like, I just was curious about, have you thought of all that? Is it on here?
Sure, so we do have the Scientific Oversight Committee, and those are the folks that are the sort of panel of experts who will be making the science decisions. So the Scientific Oversight Committee is part of the settlement. There are 6 agencies, public agencies, that will have representatives on that Scientific Oversight Committee, and then we will accept nominations and attempt to recruit other folks who are leading experts in, medical, other types of science, who could contribute to that, making the decisions about the direction of the science. In terms of input from the rest of the community, I do think we have plans to do like public forums. We had the orientation sessions, so things like that to get more outreach, more information to the community and more feedback from the community is definitely something we would like to do. And then as the study progresses, part of the CAG's, the Community Advisory Group's work will be to help us figure out how best to reach out to the rest of the community. So there's a great, we talked to folks from the Deepwater Horizon study, and I love this format that they do. They do an annual conference, and on the first day it's sort of like a typical science conference where people present maybe the papers that came out of the research that year. But then the second day they do the same papers, but they put it in plain English for the rest of us to understand. So I think something like that would be up to the CAG to kind of help us figure out what would be the best way to get that science back into the hands of the community.
And then the second question was, is there a target date where this health study would start?
Yeah, I mean, it's still gonna take a while to get up and running. We have to form those 2 panels, and then it's a bit of a kind of request for proposal process, where then researchers would be able to send in their proposals. Those will have to be reviewed, and then researchers will be selected. So it's important though to note that it's not just going to be sort of one researcher with one study. This is really going to need multiple studies. So you might have someone doing toxicology, you might have someone doing some social science research, some records review. It could, there could be different types of studies happening.
But was there a target date to start? I appreciate the graph and depth of the study.
I don't have I can't remember. I know that we're pushing the timeline, but I don't have a start date.
Mandy, is the RFP out or not?
No. It's not.
Okay, thank you.
Because the Scientific Oversight Committee will help define that.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to caution you, we are on a tight schedule, so I need quick questions, please. Put them out, and remember, we're not making, at least the way the motion is, we're not selecting anybody today, just for everybody to understand. We just want to understand the process and figure out how we're going to move forward. Okay, so, please, you know what? Go ahead, Julie, I know.
Thank you, I didn't know if you were. I was at the scientific oversight, I was at the meeting with CISA. Excuse me. And I was interested in being on the community advisory, and I was asked to sign up there. So that's meaningless at this point, you have to online sign up then?
That would have just been a sign up to get information when we have the form available.
Okay, and it will be the local advisory committees here that, I don't know, advisory committees, the neighborhood councils that will then select, if you said there's 100 people applying, then they will do the selection. Okay. And lastly, will there be any sharing of materials, information from the scientific oversight panel with the community advisory? Does that make a lot of sense?
Oh yeah, definitely. So we're still trying to figure out what the mechanics for that will be. Maybe, a liaison person who goes to both and helps update the CAG, or, but yes, definitely we want the CAG to have all of that information.
Any other question?
Andrew?
Yeah. So, two parts, I'm gonna dovetail on that one. My first question is, my view is the CAG has to be able to significantly influence or direct the SOC. So that, I wanna understand that is not in place, and it needs to be discussed. The other, now shifting gears back to the overall nomination of the CAG, with respect, the broader sense of the neighborhood councils have no business selecting the community member, the other seats. They don't know who's been in the fight. No disrespect to this board or any of the boards, but members of Granada Hills North have no idea what people in this community have been doing for 3.5 years. So that needs to be different, because what you want is a group of people who have been on the ground fighting this issue for years, not someone who just said, oh, that sounds interesting, I'll raise my hand. That's the only way you're gonna get a good participation, you're gonna get vibrant discussion, and it's the only way you have a chance of getting people to actually participate from the community. So if you take that back, please.
Sure, I mean, yes, yeah.
Who else? Francis,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yes, two questions. One, do you work for the County Department of Public Health?
I do.
Would you like to have your name in the minutes? Because right now I have that lady in black tie.
It's on the handout, Dr. Mandy Bain.
Yeah, M-A-N-D-I-B-A-N-E.
On our
It's not on that
motion.
handout, but.
Oh,
In our motion.
I'm sorry, Amanda Bain?
Mandy, M-A-N-D-I-B-A-N-E.
Bain, B-A-N. I like that.
Matt?
Am I Matt Percuco from Safe Porter Ranch? So the only disqualifier for the CAG is they can't work for SoCal Gas. But there are any other outside group can nominate somebody, correct? Now that seems wide open to total abuse by the oil and gas industry, especially SoCal Gas. They've got people running all sorts of groups all over the city. There has to be a lot more oversight into the likes of them flooding this committee with their compatriots. Also, is there a residency requirement for like this area?
Yeah. There's no residency requirement.
So again, this committee can be flooded with people that have nothing to do with this and sympathetic to the industry. And they've stated countless times publicly that they think there's no health issues from any such facility. That's on the record everywhere. You need to put in some more disqualifiers to this.
Yeah. I mean, we will ask in the form, it asks sort of like what group you're representing, you know, what groups have you participated in, what leadership roles have you had, that kind of thing.
And
So I
expect
think,
the truth from this industry.
so I think
Very
that is
valid
a very good point. I think it is something we are aware of and we'll have to consider, and I think that'll be part of the process of that selection that's made by the neighborhood council folks.
And just to tag onto that, we know from hearings where people sent in information to the docket saying, oh, Saco Gas should not close down, we need to open, and then we find out they're with BizFed or other groups, so they can rely all along.
Just a second. Craig?
Oh, thank you. I just want to make sure that certain things are by sequence. This has to be community driven, would you not? Would you agree with that, Andy? This really must be community driven. So assembling a SOC before the CAG is put into place, I think is a fundamental flaw. The SOC needs to be assembled afterwards because the community needs to weigh in on who's on this SOC for very similar reasons to what Matt just described. We don't want advocates from the gas and oil industry flooding the applications because they've got credentials. This needs to be a very balanced board. The SOC needs to be very balanced. And I really think the community should put their foot down and say that we should be selecting the candidates on the SOC, not the other way around. This has to be a community-driven effort, or else we're going to get more of the same. And Jared even acknowledged the community has concerns with the AQMD putting monitors in our community. It goes beyond that. So let's be crystal clear. This community demands that this be community-driven. Don't put the cart before the horse, please.
to follow, let me ask, has the COG been formed?
Has the scientific
I'm sorry,
oversight
yeah.
committee been formed?
Stop.
So the settlement states that we're required to have representatives from 6 agencies that are on that SOC. I think we're in the process of trying to reach out and identify who would be there from each of those. And then, so no, we have not formed the scientific oversight committee. I think there is sort of a parallel process between the scientific oversight committee and the community advisory group.
So let me follow up on that. You have item 4 says may include a representative selected by the community advisory group.
Right.
I would think that may should come out, and there's no reason not to have 2.
Have 2.
2 members.
Oh,
So you have a total of 5.
Excuse me. Critical point here.
Sorry,
May
wait,
One second.
I'm just confused. 2 out
Right
of
now you have-
5?
Need a majority.
You have 3 bullets and a bullet at the end on slide page 2, 4th sub-bullet.
Yeah, a representative.
Yes, I see the may include a representative selected by the CAG.
Right, so I think that should be a little firmer,
Uh-huh.
not a still wondering if it's going to happen. And 1 is insufficient for what, it's just a comment. I don't want
So
to
you're, I just want to make sure I understand. So you're suggesting that the CAG select 2 members of the scientific oversight committee?
I know there are people who would like a majority. I appreciate that. I'm just saying 1 is not enough. And where it goes from there, I leave it for the county's wisdom as
Yeah,
it
I mean,
navigates. what it
typically
needs to
the science oversight groups and the community groups function pretty independently. So scientists are usually selected on their scientific merit in an independent, scientific, transparent manner.
But Dr. Bain, it is not unreasonable to say that the community can select scientifically qualified members for the SOC. So just keep an open mind on providing more input from the group to the SOC, and certainly 1 is not enough.
I do want to mention one thing really quick. So really the 6 mandated members of the SOC are US EPA, Cal EPA, AQMD, OEA, County Health, and I always forget the 6th one.
Alicia?
No.
Did you say OBO?
Did you do US?
Emergency management.
I did the US, I think I said US EPA. The other, I don't think I am speaking out of turn by saying this. I think it's fair for the community and the neighborhood council to be aware that, and some of you already knew this from past, this 25 million was not an easy fight. The state did not want to give it up. And so they are paying very close attention to how we implement this. So there has to be, we need this to be a community-driven process. That's the mandate from the supervisor, for sure. There also, though, is pressure to ensure that there is independence in the science of it as well. And so we're trying to balance those. I think it's fair for me to share all that with you. It's to let you know that there's close attention to be paid to this to make sure that there is science-based independence in regards to it, while at the same time we're trying to ensure that it's a community-driven process.
And Jared, all I'm saying is just help us push
Sure.
certainly for more than 1.
Absolutely.
That's
Okay.
all I'm saying.
Mhm.
Randy?
So, quick question and suggestion. The nomination form, when people fill it out, is there a penalty of perjury for the information?
I don't know. I mean, we have had a lot of discussions about how to ensure that, and conflicts of interest for the scientists, and also just any relationship with the gas company, with, how to find those things out for sure.
So I think it might soothe some concerns if we just make it a penalty of perjury document and then include a line item on there that's something to the effect of, have you ever worked for any company or organization that is or has been majorly funded by anything associated with oil or gas companies?
Or
Something
received
like
money
that.
from.
Or
Not
received
just
money.
Right.
worked for,
So something
received
like
money.
that, I think might soothe
Yeah.
some concerns.
I mean, I'm definitely not a lawyer, so we'll have to take some of those issues back with the penalty of perjury. But yes, it's a topic.
There's a question behind you, please.
I stand to be corrected if I'm wrong, but I thought I understood that 7 or the 6 associations or
were assigned by the court for the oversight?
The public agencies, yes, 6 public agencies.
I question, like, where did they come up with it? Who suggested them? Or where did the court get those?
That I don't know if Jared, if you were involved in the legal process more, but those are 6 agencies that are related to, you know, health and toxicology and the environment. That would be why I would think they're there, but I don't know.
It was the state that requested it, and those were some of the responding agencies that the state wanted to ensure had a say in the process.
Craig?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we understand that was part of the consent decree, there were 6 state agencies beyond this committee. We have been down this path before, it doesn't go well. Okay? The reason it doesn't go well is because they seem to be on somewhat of a different agenda than the health and care of the community. They get direction from some people above them. We're okay with the 6. The community needs to put its foot down, the councils need to support this, there needs to be a majority. If there's going to be 6, then there's 7 scientific experts that are endorsed by the community, endorsed by the CAC. There must be a majority, or else we will go down the same path that we went down with AQMD, and nothing good came from it. Do not, board members, please support me on this. Talk to your other board members, community, please support me on this. This is critical to our future. We must have a majority on the SOC.
Yeah, we received your feedback.
If we can't have that, this should be a non-starter.
Okay.
No, I was just gonna say that the cart is before the horse, and unless you're gonna change things, this is just another box that your department's gonna check that you did public outreach.
Thank you.
It's absolutely meaningless. You're gonna waste all the time of these community members. Put the cart behind the horse and do what the community has just asked you to do, if it's a legitimate, process that you're gonna do here. If not,
So I will just say that typically in these kinds of health studies, the community advisory group is not selecting the scientific panel or the scientific oversight committee. So it would be unusual, I think, even to have 1 or 2 members, but obviously this is an unprecedented situation. And, you know, from usually I work in community engagement. I also wouldn't normally expect community members to have knowledge and relationships with scientific experts to be able to nominate a whole committee. So
I've
we're
had
willing.
4 phone calls with experts.
Can I finish?
I can mention 4 people.
Just a second.
Okay, so I'm just letting you know, it was requested that we follow best practices and model things like the NIH studies. And when we reach out to those researchers and ask them about this, they have recommended to us the opposite. They have recommended that you completely separate the scientists from the community group. There should not be community influence in that science panel. That is what those experts have told us. We understand, because we have been here with you all through this entire disaster, that best practice though it might be, is not necessarily the right fit for this community and this response.
Okay. All right, I gotta start bringing this down. So, Brandy, one statement, pick one of them, and then we gotta move on.
I respect what you're saying, and I understand about best practices. I think very quickly, for one thing, it even says here, they pick from a list of qualified candidates. So it's not that they're going to pick their next door neighbor who just heard about this once. So I think having the community be able to give that input to decide a majority isn't unreasonable, because you'll have already vetted them for expertise. And secondly, we have to keep in mind, this is a little bit different, I think, than some other situations, because there has been such a lack of trust, and it's been so traumatizing in this community. We have to rebuild the trust before anything can get done sensibly. And if having a majority opinion on which of the qualified candidates get to be on the seat is going to severely rebuild trust, then I really implore you to consider that as a viable option.
Okay.
Thank you.
Judy?
I'm actually going to add on to what you said. The community is worried about any of the scientific groups that will participate, if they are biased in any way, because people are tired of whitewashing it. And so if they are biased in any way at all, it's not gonna work, and that's what I think I'm hearing from everybody.
All right, so,
Can I say one sentence?
Go.
This community has a lot of scientists,
Yeah.
believe it or not. And so I think you shouldn't, assume that we can't produce a lot of community members with scientific backgrounds, even if they don't live here, somehow connected to this community, there is a lot of scientific knowledge.
Because I didn't say typically.
All right,
Typically.
okay,
Typical.
I
all right.
understand.
So,
Really good.
this was a discussion with a possible action. We need a lot more before we can take action. So I want to ask one thing. Give me a timeline for when this.
May 10th.
May 10th is what?
I need names, please.
No.
No. Okay, then you tell me when you can have the names.
Okay.
But obviously, we can't have a CAG unless we have the Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council's representatives there. We're hoping to have names by May 10th, but you can tell me when you're gonna have them.
Let me just put this out to the board for consideration. I'd like to make a motion for the board to ask if the board agrees to develop a process to identify and nominate members for this CAG.
Second.
Any comments on this motion? What I'm saying is, the PRNC is agreeing to go down the road of selecting members, who they are, the process we haven't defined, we will have to define, and then do the selection or nomination. But now we're trying to decide, are we in or not? That's what this motion is about. So, I have a motion and a second. Public comment on the motion.
You have to be in, you're kind of in.
Okay, another comment on the motion?
I think there should be more than 2 members coming from the Porter Ranch.
This motion is not about how many, so this is just about us participating in this request. All right. Board member comments?
If we wait on this, then it's gonna be that much longer that we have to wait to
Okay.
get this started, so I'm in favor.
With no further comment, call the
All
vote.
right, Brandy,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
David Phelan,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Miran,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
David Lasher,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Assad, yes, Gabriel, yes, Isam,
Yes,
and motion passes.
thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, we are 15 minutes behind schedule. No, sorry, 20 minutes behind schedule. Item 9, appointing our chairs of Safety Committee, Homelessness Solutions, and Budget Committee, which we forgot about last time. So, Asaf, I would like to know if you would be willing to continue on the Safety Committee?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Randy, homelessness? It is, I did not ask her for it. I'm asking you for it. Yes? Now, Budget Committee. We did not have an active Budget Committee last year, but I honestly would like to have one, and I would like to know. Okay. David? I think it'd be great if you can help us keep out, see how we're spending things and how things are moving and how we're budgeting things. Would that be good?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, let's take a 10-minute break, please. Thank you. Don't run, don't run.
Wait, I already said I was running.
All right. Item number 10, Gabriel.
Yes, I want to make a motion to authorize the board secretary, which is me, to order new business cards, name tags, T-shirts for the individual board members at cost not to exceed $500.
I second.
Okay, can you clarify, this is not just for the new board members, there are other members that
These are for all the new board members that don't have anything, and all the old board members that don't have, or ran out of business cards, that need business
Well,
cards.
they need to be updated because our terms are new.
Yeah.
Right, so all of them might have to be.
I think all, well.
I ran out.
Do we need more money?
Not all of them. My term doesn't change.
No,
I know mine has.
Right, so half the board.
Half the board.
You're considered new.
Yeah.
All right, so that's what that is for. I have a motion and a second, public comment.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion. One of the things that we need when we send letters, like we're sending the Rex and Parks letter, we don't have envelopes and letterhead with our logo on it. That's something that is useful for the board to send things out that look professional. So one of the things that I'd like to amend the motion if possible. What vendor are you using for the?
Everything's different. The business cards are through the city,
Okay.
city vendor. The name tags are through Minimum Press. And the t-shirts, I have absolutely no idea.
I know the vendor for that.
Can I ask you, if you don't mind not making the amendment, because we already have envelopes that I've been using with our logo, and I will put it out. It's just that we have not had envelope supplies. So if we can have a motion later to buy supply, I don't think, you tell me, you're the
Well,
treasurer.
David has to send a letter, and I have to send letters from time to time, but I don't have any.
I understand. So what I'm saying is, can the treasurer, as part of standard supplies, buy envelopes? And if he buys envelopes, I can print them
With the
and
logo.
with official PRNC envelopes. Actually, official. Yes.
As a matter of business English, I don't think anything on the letterhead should go out without your signature included. I don't think any one of us.
They are. The
Yeah.
letter has
I
his
just want-
signature on it.
Okay.
Let me clarify. It's worth clarifying. All it is, for example, when we sent the letter to Rexham Park, it was a joint signature between the land use committee chair and myself. So we created the letter, I signed it, sent it to him, he signed it, and then put it in the envelope to go. So I understand what you're saying, yeah. But just a second, I'm
So
asking.
that's fine, if you can provide that letter, because we want to send that letter also to Council Rube
Correct.
as well. So we need.
So what we need is, we need an authorization to purchase envelopes and print them at Kinko's. That's the bottom line,
Okay.
which is an expenditure. FedEx, Kinko's, FedEx
Yeah,
office.
but can't you just print one here?
Well,
Stationery,
that's
a
the
couple
cost of
pieces
them.
of paper? I mean, I'll do it
Yes.
for you, if you send it to me, I'll print it and bring it out for you guys.
There's different ways to skin a cat, I guess.
The only reason I do it that way is that the quality you get out of a print shop like FedEx Kinko's is a lot better than what an office printer does, that's all.
Right,
That's the
can we
only
have
reason.
Kinko's produce those envelopes?
Exactly, we can have them print 100 of them, and they become part of the supplies, and we can use them as we need, as we see fit.
This is really stupid, but we still have PO box?
Yes, we do.
I
Randy?
heard about it.
Is $500 going to be enough for all the people that are going to need named cards and?
That's what I was asked to put on.
No, I'm asking, are we sure 500 is going to be enough?
How many people need shirts?
Just three.
Three people need shirts, all shirts.
Do we have to have?
We have more than 3 hands up. Okay, David.
David, don't you have a shirt? Not you,
Yes,
David.
David has the old shirt. He said
Oh.
not to order him back,
Fine.
but now he wants one. Okay, so
I never got
both
mine.
Davids and then the 2 new ones.
Oh,
And then
sure.
Brandon.
T-shirts on here.
Okay, so we're gonna need more.
No, I hear you.
Yeah. So should we amend the motion to not to exceed $1,000?
We cannot increase a motion amount that way.
How about,
Do it,
let's see.
can we approve this one and come back next month?
Of course.
Yeah, let's do that.
How does that?
Let's start with the basic needs
Can't go
right
up.
now.
Can you, so,
So I can prioritize, we can order the shirts first.
okay, would you allow the secretary to do this job?
Yeah.
Well, business.
I'm the one who
owners.
knows where to get the shirts, so
I'll
I have to help.
I understand, but let's not prioritize it for him, let him do his job. So, you made a motion, do you want to amend the motion still?
To include we need the letterhead to send, we need the envelopes to send the letters out, so yes.
We won't put enough in the motion. We don't have enough. We can't amend the motion.
What's wrong with doing this next time? Is there any letter going out between now
Yes,
and next time?
yes.
I can have it printed, don't worry.
Okay, all right. So we have to do a new motion at the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
To authorize the expenditure.
Okay,
Okay.
let's do
Call
that.
the vote.
We're good?
President,
Call the vote.
Brandy,
Sure.
Susan,
Yes.
David Balin,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Miran,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
David Lasher,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Assad, yes, Gabriel, yes, Isam,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. Item number 11, Jason.
All right. Discussion and possible action to select 2 board members as primary and secondary bank card holders. That's the motion as written. However, we can only select one, is our understanding of the way the rules work with the city clerk's office, so,
So would you like to amend the motion?
yes.
Would you state the amended motion for?
Yes. Discussion and possible action to select 1 board member as bank card holder.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Public comment? All right, here's the problem here. This is a motion to authorize the action to select 2 board members, but it does not identify a board member. So what are we doing here? Are we simply saying we want to select a member and then that's the end of the motion?
Can we amend it?
There's a discussion that takes place first, so I guess we could treat it like we do when we nominate
Okay, so-
president, secretary. you
Fair
know,
enough.
same
So
thing.
this is a discussion, possible action. So before then, you would make a motion, let's have a discussion. We're going to select one, and let's have a discussion about who that one is. And then we'd have a motion to
Right.
select that person. Reasonable? Yes, David?
No, I was just, Jason, I thought you were going to be the card holder.
Well, it has to be official vote of the board.
Right, yeah, we didn't do that at the previous, when I was
If
elected.
if somebody's gonna be a card holder, they're gonna have to go and take,
I understand, David, but the city clerk would not allow it without a vote of the board to nominate and elect.
I got it.
So we got to do that now.
I got it. The members should also realize that if they do want to take into that position, that they're gonna have to go get certified by the city.
So as part of your discussion, are you suggesting someone be the card holder? Who would that be?
Jason?
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wants to have discussion on this item?
There's just the form that needs to be filled out and signed off, and then.
But let's take the vote and then we can fill out the paperwork for the city clerk. Any other suggestion? Yes?
Got a question. Jason, I want you to do it. Are you going to commit to actually going to buy stuff with whoever needs to buy stuff, i.e. event runners? To buy
I will
stuff?
be working with everybody to get the food and the agendas printed and the event.
Excellent.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
David Bell?
So, just to follow up on that, Jason and I are gonna be working on that together. We did speak to the city about it. There's not a problem. I can do a lot of the running if Jason can take it over the phone. So, we're gonna work
That's fine. Okay.
together, so.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so without other nomination, is there any other nomination? All right, can I have a motion to select Jason Hector as the bank card holder?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Becky seconded. Public comment? Board discussion or comment on the motion?
Thank you, Jason.
Call the vote?
All right, Brandy,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
David Balin,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Miran, Becky,
Yes.
David Lasher, Lori,
Yes.
Assad, yes, Gabriel, yes, Isam.
Yes.
All right, motion passed.
Thank you. Item number 12, Susan.
Motion to approve board member reimbursement to ESOM for March 28th meeting material
Printing costs of $32.72, and the receipts are attached.
I'll second that, Gabriel.
And just to explain, this is still with, we're still without a card, so what we're doing this is I'm printing them at Kinko on my account, so. Okay, public comment, board comment, call the vote.
All right, Brandy,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Miran,
Yes.
Becky, David, Lori,
Yes.
Assad,
Yes.
Gabriel, yes, Isam, yes, so
Yes.
Isam, all right, motion passes.
Thank you. Item 13, before you read it, I'd like to explain it.
Okay.
Motion 13, the explanation is in the motion body itself, and I know everybody has read it completely, but when we approved the letter to CPUC, and I had to go to Kinko's to print it, the cost of printing was not part of the motion. So I asked the city clerk, if it's possible to authorize, how do I get reimbursed for that cost? And they said you need to have a motion to authorize the printing cost, and then you have a motion to approve the printing expenditure. So that's why we have these two tandem. I laughed too when they told me, but that is what items 13 and 14 are, and the receipts are back there. So, Susan?
Okay, do we need to vote on them separately?
Yes.
Okay, motion to authorize printing of the letter to the CPUC approved at the March meeting and mailing it at a cost not to exceed $75.
Second.
Public comment? Board comment? Yes.
Why is it so much money to print and mail something?
4 pages, 16 recipients color printing.
16 or 16?
64 pages of color printing on color printing paper,
16 or
57 This does not include the cost of the envelopes, but I didn't want to bother, so. This is just the paper and the printing at campus. Any other board comment? Call the vote.
All right, Brandy,
Yeah.
Susan,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Miran,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Assad, Gabriel, yes, Isam,
Yes.
motion passes.
Item 14,
Motion to approve board member reimbursement to ESOM for a CPUC letter printing cost of $57.15. And that's the actual receipt.
I'll second that.
Kate seconded. Public comment? Board comment?
Is someone with $1,000 threshold for reimbursement?
It's-
Hope not.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we need to find out. We'll,
Oh, is
I
that
would
for
actually,
12 months?
I'd like clarification, when does that counter start?
So,
Fiscal year, is it?
it's fiscal
Okay.
year, and I just talked to them, and they said it's 1,000 per board member for the fiscal year. So keep in mind that there's a chance if you go over that.
So is it the fiscal year, this fiscal year, that would have started July 1st of 2018?
Yes.
Okay, we will have to find out. The clerk will be counting.
I'm sure.
All right, can I have a board vote?
Sure, Brandy,
Yeah.
Susan,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Miran,
Yes.
Becky,
Yeah.
David,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Assad, Gabriel, yes, Isam,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. Item 15, like Jason mentioned earlier, it would be good for us to schedule our board retreat so we can develop the budget so that when the new year starts, we can put in the budget right away and be able to get a card and get the authorization for the expenditures. So we always fall behind on scheduling that, and we pay the price by not being able to spend anything until September. So let's do that. I would like to ask that we schedule a board meeting in May, the retreat. It would be a Saturday, and I'm, do I have it in here? I don't know if I have it in the motion, suggested dates.
We really want the new,
Wow, that's
we
coming up.
definitely want to try and get the new members.
Well, I'd like to get everybody there, but
Everybody goes.
Yeah.
I understand, I understand.
They're usually,
There's nothing wrong with being ambitious.
we can usually accommodate. We can do-
Yeah, I'm out of that Saturday.
Are we having it for Galley?
I don't know.
Most likely.
I-
We have.
I just want to pick a date so we can ask the outreach committee to help us take care of
11?
the event.
And the documents are posted. On the
When
share.
are you back?
Is the 11th or the 18th available?
What are the times?
Of what one?
May.
We saw, and the times do the 18th.
Okay.
So, or, you know, after that,
So that beautification conference, that beautification, second annual beautification conference is that Saturday.
Which Saturday?
That.
I threw out 2 dates.
The
so you guys are
18th.
confusing me.
18th.
The 18th. So is the 11th a problem?
I can do 11. I can.
Let me ask this question.
Does it have to be a Saturday though?
I'm just asking, is Saturday the 11th a problem for somebody?
yes, I have an appointment at 1 o'clock. I can't do 1 o'clock.
What do we do?
Could we do it early? Be done by 12?
Sure.
No.
Yeah, I go there. 2 or 6.
May 25th? You're out.
I'm out of town.
You're out.
So the 11th was okay though, right?
The 11th was okay.
Yeah, I don't have to attend.
No, we'll make it early, so
What?
it's 7 a.m.
Which one?
No, we go back to that.
Susan,
what time do you have to be out on the 11th?
1 o'clock.
The 11th of May.
So 12:45.
Is that Memorial Day weekend?
No, that's the last week.
Isn't that Mother's Day?
That's the week, that's the day before Mother's Day.
Oh, I'm actually out of Sunday.
Oh, okay.
But I can send you it's,
A
no.
representative?
I'm just letting you know. I'm just letting you
I
know.
was gonna say something mean, but I'm not gonna do that.
Thanks.
Why don't we do June
You
1?
should send the guy with the beard.
Yeah.
I can't.
Or Memorial
You
Weekend?
have a-
I got it, birthday.
June 8th.
I'm sorry?
June 8th?
Can we do June 8th?
End of June is the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
That is
You're
close.
right.
We need to
That's
try to
too
get a
close.
budget.
All right, let's, if we can,
Go by July 1st.
if we can plow through with May 11th,
May 11th, I think. May 11th.
Yeah, May 11.
But not at 1 o'clock.
Yeah. We'll start early.
But you can have somebody come from Dunn, right? Somebody else will come.
what?
I think Jasmine might be able to get somebody else from the.
June 8th? Just asking. June 8th is a no?
That's good.
Well,
Good with me.
Yes.
question is who's a no? That's the problem. You're a no.
I'm okay.
Definitely no?
Definitely no.
All right.
And I might be out of town on
June.
June 8th too.
June
School's
8th.
out.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I'll be moving you to my new office, so. We can have it, CD 12.
All right,
I like this.
so we're staying with the 11th.
Do we have to double check with, is it Porter Valley Country Club?
We'll figure out where we're gonna be.
I guess I'm not.
Susan,
You are, but you saw what happened.
what time should we take Ed's on the 11th?
I'm just gonna.
I don't know.
Where are you going on the 11th?
Take a week, there's a night.
Nice.
Several hours.
Good for you.
All right.
What, on the 8th?
We're good?
11th.
We'll stick with the 11th. And the challenge to us will be to make it short.
Short and early.
At what time?
I don't know yet, so let's block Saturday, please.
The later the better.
8 to 12.
Susan's got one car, so early.
I agree, but then we have night owls that don't get up till 10 o'clock, so.
1.
I would just
1
love
o'clock.
to see y'all set yourself up for success.
What?
Previous retreats have gone in like over or very, you've left feeling like you needed even more time.
Yes.
So trying to squeeze it into a morning.
How much time do we usually use, do you know?
Your fellow board
It,
members.
it takes a good 5 hours.
Yeah.
So trying to start at 7 a.m. so Susan, like,
Okay.
it's up to you. I was just,
Be there.
I'd
So-
rather see you do it later and do it well than do it early and.
Okay, so we're gonna keep doing this till one of us drops from tired. So what are we gonna do here?
What about a Sunday?
I'd like suggestions.
There's
I'd
Sunday.
like suggestions.
May 11th, 7 a.m.
Oh,
8 a.m. I'm sick.
June 8th.
Well, we usually do last time we did a breakfast with
10 a.m.
So,
I'd just like to point out also, like, I really admire your dedication to doing it early. I think that's great. The budget, template from the clerk and your strategic plan and all of that might not even be released until June.
Oh.
So that, in case they made any type of updates to it, for example, because a lot of things have changed, like rollover funding. So you might want to wait until June so you're not duplicating your efforts. If
okay,
you're
let me
doing
ask,
anything-
let me ask, you
Yeah.
convinced me, let me ask. June 15th,
I'm in Hawaii.
It's my wedding anniversary, so
Wow, yes.
Okay,
June 22nd.
I'm in Hawaii.
22nd. June 22nd.
I'm gonna go to Hawaii.
I'm in Hawaii.
You're in Hawaii?
She's in Hawaii for 2 weeks, y'all.
She's in Hawaii.
29th, that's the last.
The end of the year.
It is, it's the last.
I'm gonna, Assad,
Skip me.
okay,
June is
I need to
outside.
fall on your sword here, and we're gonna try to shoot for the June 8th.
If it's early enough in the morning, I can make it.
Make it as whatever you can do on
Yeah.
that 8th, make it, and the rest, go home and enjoy your Eid.
Okay.
Okay?
Mr. President, can I ask Jasmine a relevant question?
Oh,
So what would be available, because we could certainly discuss the budget.
yeah, you can absolutely discuss it. I'm not trying to discourage you, I'm just saying.
So on May 11th, we would be
Yeah.
able to discuss the budget. What
Yeah.
else could we do that we wouldn't have to be waiting on forms for? What else?
You can do anything you would normally do, I'm just saying, if you do it in May,
Right.
and then the clerk releases the template, and there was something on there that's new that you didn't discuss,
Yeah.
now you have to discuss it
But we have a
again.
June meeting to do that.
You do,
We have a regular June board
right,
meeting
but
to do that.
you know from previous experience with
Yeah.
retreats, like how long each of those discussions takes, especially when it gets to the budget.
Yeah, in fact, we hardly had time at the end of the
Yeah.
budget. We just like
Let me say, June 8th is far earlier than we've ever done, so it's a decent improvement. So if we can have, let's,
As the treasurer, I'd like to see it in May, to be honest, because I think
I
we can
agree.
just do the budget discussion at the retreat, and we can do some orientation and, getting to know the operations of this board in May, and then we could handle all the issues that we need to handle in June with the forms that come out.
let me make a suggestion. Let me make a suggestion so we can nip this in the bud and say, we're gonna have a primary and a secondary, and I will ask all board members to block those two.
Yeah.
So, let's do May, what was it?
11.
May 11th as a primary, and June 8th as a secondary. And we'll get further clarifications on this, but I would like to ask that as part of this motion, to also authorize the outreach committee chair to make the call on the schedule based on availability of logistics without having to come back to the board for a vote.
Yes.
Okay?
Budget? No budget?
We didn't,
We don't have a budget motion on this, so no.
the next month meeting.
Thank you.
Okay?
See what happens.
Hold on for a second. When is the next meeting?
May the 8th.
May.
That's not gonna happen. That's not gonna work.
Special.
Why?
Because to reserve the place, you gotta pay, you gotta have the budget in place to reserve the place. And if the meeting is only 3 days before the retreat, next meeting, then we're gonna have to do it through a special meeting.
We're just not gonna be able to do it in May, I don't see us being able to get everything set up.
I agree.
Yeah.
Just a
Yes, Rebecca?
May's a very busy month for people, graduations, the schools are out in May, and Father's Day, or, there's, what's that?
Father's Day in June.
There's just a lot going on.
All right, you know what, let's not do a silent motion. Let me ask for June 8th, please. I'm asking motion to schedule the board retreat on June 8th with the details and the budgets to be worked out and approved at the May board meeting. May I?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Public comment? Yes, Jasmine?
In the spirit of compromise, you could have an agenda item at your May meeting to discuss the budget, like preliminarily, to get the public's feedback, like a participatory budgeting process, like, oh, we just want to hear your ideas. And then you can have an informed discussion in June at your retreat of like, oh, this is what we heard.
Okay, any board comment?
I agree
Great idea.
with what Jasmine's saying, because it's
What is
really,
she saying?
she's,
You didn't
well,
listen?
The question is, are we scheduling for June 8th? That's all I want to clear right now.
Yes,
Do we have a comment on the June 8th schedule?
good idea.
it's like this.
No?
Normal call.
Thank you. Any other comment on the June 8th schedule? Call the vote.
All right, Brandy,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
David Balin,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Nimrod,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
David Lasher,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Assad,
Yes.
Gabriel, yes, Isam.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right,
The next item,
to work.
which I was trying to keep at 1 hour, which is why I have been rude, is the orientation session. While this is targeted for new board members, it is important for all board members. So I would like to ask, maybe we can all, are you going to do a presentation?
Yeah, but I also have the print copies.
So we should sit over there. Since we got to look at the screen.
Yes, that's
So
great.
if the board would like to move, and let's see what you've got to say.
So you have the wire this time? You have the wire?
I brought the wire, I brought everything.
Okay.
And it's hot in here. Or is that just me?
You guys, while we're setting up, I just want to remind you that the, all-you-can-eat pancake breakfast for Devonshire divisions for law enforcement in Devonshire is April 27th.
You know, Becky, you break my heart. It is in our e-blast.
I know, but I just have to.
Oh, you got tickets. What you were telling us about the event, I'm still waiting for somebody to say something about the e-blast. No, not in our e-blast, no, I'd love to have it there. Anybody reading our e-blast?
I did, honestly, I read everything you posted.
Saturday.
You spent so much time. I read everything. No, no, no.
E-blast.
Then I go on the website, I download all the meeting, except for everything for it, so they're not watching so much more.
Jasmine, do you need help set up?
That'd be great.
Let's do it.
Thank you.
Where's your cable?
I'll go get it.
From where?
Right here. I mean, you're not watching me.
Perfect.
There's no one behind you. I also have my own projector.
No, let's do this.
Okay.
Did you watch the movie, what was it? My Cousin Vinny?
Yeah. Oh my God.
My biological clock is ticking, come on. I know, it's what's referring to.
No, so bad, but
Jesus. What is that?
hopefully it wasn't neat at all.
And then what? And then what? And then what?
How's your runs?
Okay, why?
No, don't get a projector. I got-
I know, my husband and I were hiking and we saw one. But normally I kind of go within our community, just in the street, but within, I usually don't see snakes there. It's in the backyard or it's in, like, you know, where the trails. And some of them we have to watch because they're coming in and they're trimming all the rushes. And when they struck out, that's yeah, I know it's a fire. I gotta work on They were our version of the legend. Right? I mean, well, they're on our level. Just got back to the hospital.
Shit.
No, I'm not going to fly to Virginia.
Oh, I bet that is beautiful. No, I'm on a 21.
Especially when you went over different
What about now?
My wife said, I want you to listen. Yep, it is. I said, no, we are in the same boat. She said, I don't care what listen to.
Smart,
Laser pointer?
It's weird, focus. So much better when you're doing your day, like going up there and getting a lot of napkins.
Man, that was subtle. That was very good. That was very good.
You can come to some of the meetings, the next one, the next educational forum is in this year.
No USB. So, this
Yeah,
turn on this.
you know about the round, yeah. I was afraid of
This main one's a pointer. Back and forth. This one's black.
Okay, let's do this.
I'm good. I'm great.
Thank you for coming.
I was late.
All right.
I'm getting a recap. You were the bravest neighborhood council president. You should really seriously get veteran for a
Oh, can I give you this?
Okay, it doesn't appear as though this wants to work.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And who's that? Probably one. Yes,
Do you have your USB 3 plug? Yeah. Does it have a, what do they call it, Thunderbolt port? A square Thunderbolt port? Then you have a adapter for it in the back. Can you bring it out?
Oh, qualification, again? Oh, no, I saw
There it is. Woo, thank you. Okay, let's begin.
Did it stay?
Yes, thank you. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for giving me the time on your agenda to kind of go over this orientation. I don't want this to be painful. I'm not like a huge fan of PowerPoint and like lecture format, so just stop me at any time with questions. I'm gonna go into an overview, thank you, of the neighborhood council system and how it came to be. So I'll keep that part brief because hopefully we all know that by now. But you know, just in case. Yes. Okay, so we're talking about the who, what, when, where, how of the neighborhood council system. You all know the why. That was your personal reason for running. Glad you're here. So who are neighborhood councils made up of? As you know, volunteer stakeholders who want to participate in their community. People just like you. So a stakeholder is anybody that lives, works, or owns property in the neighborhood, and also those who declare a stake in the neighborhood as a community interest stakeholder, which means that they have a substantial and ongoing participation within the neighborhood council's boundaries. And so that might mean community organizations, educational, like with schools, nonprofits, religious organizations.
And that's just really important because I know like sometimes there are contentious issues, for example, with like planning and land use items. But people that like are business people in your community are stakeholders too. So it's, the neighborhood council system is really unique in that way, in that it's very inclusive. Traditionally, like where is the city's taxes coming from? It's from the like residents. But with neighborhood councils, it's anybody who participates in the community.
But the community stakeholder?
Yes.
So they're not a resident business owner or a property owner, but they have some sort of, whether they're with a nonprofit or a church or whatever, if they stop participating in that nonprofit or that religion, at that point, do they cease becoming a stakeholder?
In theory, because your stakeholder participation is, you need to participate, right? So if you were on the board of a nonprofit or you volunteered with a group and that commitment is over, while you might still care very deeply about the community, for example, you couldn't still like hold that community interest seat anymore. So anytime your stakeholder status changes is when you would come to the board and say, hey, you know, I'm moving out of Porter Ranch, or my business, I'm retiring, or yeah, my commitment with this group ended. And so you wouldn't be technically a stakeholder anymore, but you would still be welcome at events and meetings.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So these are just some examples, everything I just said, essentially. Let's move on. Okay, so what are neighborhood councils? They're city-certified grassroots organizations that represent the community and help make the city more responsive to local needs. LA is a big city. This map is just for scale. We have a population of 4 million people. That's the city of Los Angeles, not the county. The county is obviously even bigger. 465 square miles, 7,366 miles of streets, and 15 council districts, each representing over 260,000 constituents. So this is like one of my favorite maps ever, because you can see you can fit San Francisco, Boston, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, St. Louis, Cleveland, Minneapolis, all of Manhattan, like in LA's city boundaries. So our city is massive. There are 99 neighborhood councils. You're one of them, obviously, right? So just for scale. Okay, well, so yeah, who's awake? How many neighborhood councils? Woo, 99. Yes.
How many districts?
If it were a city unto itself, the San Fernando Valley, what number would we be?
Six.
Number six? Six?
Six.
Yeah, that's what I thought, okay. And when, it hadn't changed.
Yeah, and the valley alone is as big as the rest of the city combined. Which brings me to how neighborhood, okay, this is out of date, it's 99. I always give this presentation out of order. I like say something and then the slide comes up. But what I was going to say, to Becky's point about how big the valley is, neighborhood councils were born out of a secession movement from the valley. The valley wanted to secede from the city and become its own city because it felt that it wasn't getting its fair share of services. And so the city of LA was like, wait, we love you, don't break up with us. AKA like, don't take all that taxpayer money, please just like stay and we'll give you more of a voice in government. So, neighborhood councils are subject to many federal, state, and local laws that govern other city departments, such as the American with Disabilities Act, the Brown Act, Conflict of Interest laws, the City Charter, Public Records Act, and the plan for a citywide system of neighborhood councils. So all of your meetings have to be ADA compliant so that they're inclusive and open to the public. Obviously, meeting in a school or any other type of public facility is a great way to ensure that ADA compliance. The Brown Act is California's open meetings law. So the spirit of the law is that business should be conducted in public with the public having ample notice to participate. This is really important. When you all post agendas for your meetings, you have to post them 72 hours in advance, right? That is the requirement. It's ideal if you send them out, yes, more than the 72 hours in advance so that the public can participate. What just happened earlier in the meeting when one of the board members said, hey, can we like raise the amount? You only had 1,000 listed on the budget. So if Jasmine lives across the street and she sees the board is like gonna spend $1,000, okay, I'm not gonna like cross the street for that. But then all of a sudden after the meeting, I read the minutes and you spent 10,000. Well, hang on a second, I might have crossed the street to weigh in on that. So that's part of the reason, for example, that you couldn't like raise an amount that you were gonna spend when it was previously agendized. So just a tip on that is, always like budget a little more. For example, you could say like up to 1,500. That doesn't mean you have to spend all 1,500. It just means now you have a bit of a buffer.
I'd like to comment on that.
Yeah.
One of the challenges of that is if we up it, and we say up to 2,500, all of a sudden it becomes allocated in the financial report at the city clerk. And we look at it as it's a committed amount. And as we proceed through expenditures, we try to say, okay, what is not committed, and we try to just stay within those, when in reality, there's a lot in that committed that was not intended to be spent. It was just set as an upper limit on emotion and just gets added to that pot. And we have this situation here now. I mean, we have the Earth Day was, how much?
$5,000.
$5,000 in that allocated fund that's actually not allocated anymore because we're not having it. So it needs to be a bit of a balance. We shouldn't overshoot too much because then we're shooting ourselves in the foot as the budget committee tries to figure out how much money we have left.
But we can go back now, once I get access, I believe I can go back now and unallocate.
Yes.
I think so.
And I don't know, frankly, if that takes a board motion.
No,
Okay.
your treasurer just goes and pulls that off the list of pending expenditures
Okay.
or.
So it's a communication thing.
But you do need to, when you do that, you have to also have an updated budget that you present to the board as part of the treasurer report, the financial report.
There you go.
That the board does.
So it adds unnecessary work if we overdo this, that's all.
Just to Jasmine's point, we also can cut, like, we could have said, instead of allocating 500 for cards, we could have said, I don't care, 2,000, and then adjusted the motion down to 1,000 or down to 500. We can cut motions, we just can't expand motions.
Right.
So we could go crazy with our motions or our suggestions of motions, and then actually make our motions more reasonable when we pass them.
My preference would be, if you want to bring an expenditure motion to the floor, bring it with the estimates or quotes or printouts from a website, Amazon, whatever. Do the homework before we bring an expenditure to the board and just put a number.
Yes.
That's really what I'd like us to do.
I think what I just want to impress upon you is the spirit of the law, which is to give the public reasonable notice.
Got it.
So it's not reasonable notice, for example, to say up to 5,000 when you really only intend to spend like 1,500. I'm just saying, giving yourself a little bit of a buffer so that you're not, down to the wire. But balance, yeah. Okay. Hello. Okay. Conflict of interest laws. So conflicts of interest are a personal matter to be discussed between the board member and the city attorney. If you think you have a conflict before an agenda item that is coming up, you can contact the city attorney's office for advice, and they will advise you on whether or not you need to recuse yourself for that item. But I just want to stress again that it is a personal matter, so it is not for another board member to say, so-and-so has a conflict, and I know that, and question.
And for the new board members, this is not giving you enough information to know, okay, so whom do I contact? We will get, I should have gotten you already, our assigned city attorney contact information. Right now, she continues to be Carmen Hawkins, who is retiring in about a month.
So after she retires, we'll see who gets assigned to our neighborhood council, and each individual member should have the attorney's email and phone number so you can contact them. And that is, as Jasmine said, it's an absolutely personal issue. You don't need to tell anybody, and nobody can tell you to do it or not do it.
And you've all taken your ethics training now, so you know some of these conflict of interest laws. For example, if you live within 500 feet of a property that's being developed and a developer comes, then you know, like, so you've all taken that training. Just as things come up, just be aware of that and reach out to Carmen and whoever else for advice, but it is personal. So the plan for a citywide system of neighborhood councils is the document that governs neighborhood councils in our department. The wind is really high. So where do neighborhood councils meet? Obviously in your neighborhood. This is important as well because it's come up before. Oh, can we meet outside our boundaries? No, you have to meet within your boundaries. There are very, very rare extreme circumstances where if you really cannot find a location, which we're standing in one, so you know what I mean? So anyway, the exception might be if you were to do like a partnership with other neighborhood councils and you were all gonna come together, you could like be in a different, obviously if 5 NCs in one region, you can't be 5 places at once, so. But then you should meet in your region, that would make sense. When were neighborhood councils formed? The first one was formed in 2002, okay, very exciting, yes. This is what I was explaining about how the city wanted to secede, and so the new city charter created a system of neighborhood councils and our department. Right, so the city charter defines the purpose of neighborhood councils, which is to promote more citizen participation in government and to make government more responsive to local needs. So this is really the spirit and purpose and mission and guiding force of the neighborhood council. This is what you should be focusing on timely before your retreat. This is an organization chart of the city of LA, so neighborhood councils are right here next to the electorate. Neighborhood councils also have the commission, the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, and so I can talk more about that in a bit. But essentially, you're a neighborhood commissioner.
What's her name?
She's new. Yes, Quinn, thank you, Quinvo Ramirez. So she is your commissioner for this area. And the commission meets and they rotate their meetings. So every other one is at City Hall. And then the ones that aren't are out in the community. So the next time they're around, I'll let you know.
And how many neighborhood councils does one commissioner, like our commissioner, represent, roughly? Like, how big is their region or?
It's the valley, so she's the north, I believe it's, yeah.
North, south. So it's like 13, 15, something like that.
They're 34 in the valley, and it's, I think right now it's 17, 17.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot,
Yeah.
more than most in the city.
All right, okay, well, you're here. So why? To give advice. So you're an advisory body, so the way you do this is through community impact statements, for example. So this is another thing that makes neighborhood councils really special and unique is the ability to file a community impact statement, which means that your comments, how you, let me back up. So when your city council representative is voting on a piece of legislation, for example, they would get like a summary at the bottom of that motion telling them how, if you file the community impact statement, like a summary and whether you kind of want them to vote yes or no. So the idea with this, there's strength in numbers, right? So the more neighborhood councils file community impact statements, it would be impossible to ignore if a council member had every neighborhood council within their region saying, you know, vote no on this piece of legislation, and then they vote yes. What community impact statements also allow you to do is have extra speaking time at city council meetings to advocate for the board's position on the matter. So it's essentially like a position paper, I guess, yeah, where you're kind of stating how the board feels about a piece of policy. And that is obviously discussed in a public meeting. You agree on who's going to write that community impact statement, and then there are designated people on your board who are filers and have an account, and they just go in, and that statement becomes part of the public record. So you can even file something retroactively, like, or something that's pending in committee. Let's say it's come before the council and then it gets sent back to a committee. You can still file a community impact statement, and it will always be part of that council file, and all of that is publicly available in the council file management system. Yes.
So I want your advice on this, and then what you just said is maybe part of the solution. Twice now there have been motions before the city council directly about neighborhood councils. And in at least one case, you even sent out through Dunn a request that we agendize doing a community impact statement on it, and then 3 days later they voted on it, when most of us didn't have meetings for weeks or days later. And that's happened a couple of times where there's something, I go to the effort of looking at it, I go to the effort of following it, I'm ready to do a motion to address it here for a community impact statement, but they vote on it before that ever happens. Is there anything we can do so that we can let them know, we can't get you a community impact statement if you're gonna vote on it immediately? Like, they're not even giving us enough time to do a special election, or a special meeting sometimes. Is there anything we can do?
We try to go through the legislation as it moves through council and come up with like the weekly legislative reports to give them to you like as soon as we get wind of it. You can add it after the fact. As far as getting it through before, you're always welcome to submit comments to your city council representative or to go to the meetings, but as far as like...
Is the council aware of that? Like, do they know that's a problem, or do they not care?
I can't speak for the council.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Fair enough.
The 2 minutes, it doesn't have to be, the more time.
It's 5 minutes, isn't it?
5 minutes, okay.
5 minutes, right?
Cool.
So just like at meetings here, for example, if you had a room of 100 people, you might say to make the meeting run smoothly, we're gonna allow public comment for a minute. So city council could do something like that where they say, this time it's gonna be 1 minute or this time it's gonna be 2. Usually 2 is standard. So neighborhood councils get extra time on that when they file the community impact statement because they're advocating and explaining for that position. If you haven't filed that CIS statement and you're just identifying yourself as an NC board member, you're given the same time as the rest of the public. The reason for the extra time is to advocate for the position that you have already discussed and agreed upon, agendized, etc. as a board because it's a formal position.
I think the answer to your question needs to be someone goes to that meeting and says, we ask you to table this vote because neighbor councils are preparing CIS and they have not had the chance to submit them to you. And then let them say no and vote, and then they would have voted knowing that people want to opine about it. So
As individuals though, not as...
it doesn't matter who it is. I mean, someone from the board goes and says, I'm a member of the board, public comment, right?
Yeah.
I ask you to table that vote.
And further on that point, you can contact, the chairman of the committee. For example, if it's going to, Health, Education, and Parks Committee, you can contact the chairman of the committee and let him know this issue really impacts us. Can you please allow us time, not schedule it for hearing, the next meeting?
Okay.
Okay. Also, all of the wonderful outreach events you do, so like every year you always have a presence at the Valley Emergency Preparedness Fair. You usually do your Earth Day events, and I'm sure there are other examples. You have your holiday party. All of these are like great examples of doing outreach to the community and really, just getting your name out there, understanding what your community wants and is concerned about. That's necessarily a problem here. I think you guys do a great job of that. And then collaborating with community and government. So neighborhood councils receive a budget of $42,000 each year. This is the reason that you're required to take your funding training and your ethics and all of that. So if you're out of compliance with any of your trainings, you can't vote on funding items. And like if you were to have a youth representative, for example, like a lot of neighborhood councils do, you don't in your bylaws, but if you wanted to appoint one, they would not be able to vote on financial matters if they're minors. So you're guarded with, these are taxpayer funds, obviously, so $42,000 times 99 neighborhood councils, it's a lot of money, which is part of the reason for all of the procedures and policies from the city clerks to ensure that that money is being utilized properly, and really to do outreach to the community and to sort of like reinvest back into the community. So things have to have a public benefit. They can't benefit a private group or just like a select group of individuals. So for example, when you're funding something for a school, like Granada Hills High School, usually they might come for like an NPG, for example, a nonprofit, neighborhood purpose grant is what NPG stands for. So there are a couple of types of projects that a neighborhood council can fund. One is called the NPG, that's a neighborhood purposes grant. Another is a CIP, that's a community improvement project. Porter Ranch has done a lot of those, for example, like taking care of the trees in the parkways, like the medians. Yes, round of applause. So that is an example of a community improvement project. A neighborhood purposes grant might be when a nonprofit organization or a school comes to you and it says, hey, I have this robotics program for the students, like any student can apply, or can be part of the robotics club, and like this is gonna go toward equipment or materials, and it's open to any student. But it couldn't be that a school like comes to you and says, we wanna take like our 5 highest, scoring like report card students to Disneyland. Like that's obviously not a public benefit, you know what I'm saying? So that it has to be something that is open to everyone. It's the same thing, like if you're gonna feed people at an event, you can say like, food while supplies last, but you can't just like feed yourselves and not feed the public, for example.
Judge, we also need clarification on the issue of if school doing a fundraiser, doing a run, and participants pay $10 to be part of that run. That's part of the whole event. And they ask us to support that. Suppose that people are paying, but the problem is, it is not clear that that is a requirement, that that is a ticket. It's a great idea, and we need clarification from the city on to prevent doing it wrong.
The public can't be charged for for example, when I go to certain meetings, like the shall remain nameless, I've had like a valet attendant come up to me and be like, it's $5 to park here, and then I'm like, this is my badge, and this is a public meeting, and you can't charge for parking, and he's like, okay. Right? So like the public can't be charged for attending anything that the neighborhood council sponsors. If the neighborhood council wants to have a fair, and there are vendors at the fair who are charging people to eat their food, that is totally different. But an admission fee or paying $10 to participate in a run, for example, would not be okay because it's not inclusive. It's not taking into account people that might want to participate but maybe not be able to because they're being charged that fee.
Let me ask you a question. How many neighborhood councils have put their banners up at the Chamber of Commerce breakfast where I pay $40 to participate in that breakfast?
I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know the specifics.
I'll tell you, a lot of neighborhood councils do those.
But we also I don't have the specifics of the situation in front of me. So if the neighborhood council, if you are, like with the Chamber of Commerce, you're gonna say, yes, we will like e-blast to our stakeholders. But no, we're not gonna give you money to like co-sponsor this event because you're charging the public. That's where the line is. So you might be a partner in terms of the outreach that you provide, the network that you have within the community, but you're not a fiscal partner.
But you are in essence promoting a for-pay event.
But
You're using,
So for instance, if you go to something with the Chatsworth Quarter Ranch neighborhood chamber, like Chatsworth buys an ad in the program, and part of the advertising package is, okay, you get to put your banner up because everybody who bought an ad of a certain size gets to put their banner up.
but that ad money goes towards funding this event.
But that's not.
I mean, you see my point?
I agree with
That
you.
money is going to benefit a for-profit event.
That's not a good point.
With some small events.
That's too crazy.
And that's why I'm saying, we need clarity whether these things are okay or not okay.
It's not okay to fund something that the public is going to be charged for. If you want to argue the semantics with the city clerk,
No.
you're welcome to do so.
It's a question of what's the definition of fund something.
Right.
But that's it, I'm done.
So whether or not we can prove that the Chamber of Commerce is using the advertising money to fund the food that they're charging people to eat, I like that. I'm not gonna go investigate that. Maybe the city clerk might. I don't manage your funding. The city clerk does, but to Judy's point about the advertising, that's fulfilling your mission of outreach. That's saying to people that are attending that event, hey, we're your neighborhood council and we're here for you. So it really just depends. It's highly situational, case-by-case basis, but the city clerk has their funding policies and procedures on their website that's open to anyone to look at. I really encourage your treasurer and second signer to familiarize themselves with those policies, especially. Okay.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
So I was talking about our Earth Day co-sponsoring event, and I just kind of got a sense of how it works. So, like, events need to be approved in advance, okay? But they're not really considering that an event. Like, an event would be like our debate, our candidate forum. That's an event. But what they're considering that is it's okay to purchase food for that as long as we have an active participation.
You're talking the cleanup day.
The cleanup day, yeah. I'm talking about two things at once, but as far as the cleanup, they were okay with us not getting a pre-approved, there's that form they want to fill
But
out.
that's not the issue here. The issue
I'm
is
not talking
whether
about what
that
you're
event
saying.
is open or not open to the
I'm
public.
not talking anything to do with what you're saying. Yeah. I'm talking about just something that I learned that I want to share with everybody. So basically what they were saying is that, because I was trying to find out if we needed to get that event pre-approved.
Right.
Because they want us now for events 30 days in advance, there's a 2-page form. It's not a complicated form, it just wants to know the people. But they said it's okay because you're giving money for food and you're participating. So the problem would be if we're giving money for food but we're not participating. They don't want that because that's public funds going to some other entity for not. So just so you guys understand how that works. But we do need events need to be pre-approved. So they're not considering that an event because we're participating in it, but when you hold an event like we're doing for the election forum, that requires the form to be filled out, sent to the city clerk. I believe it's city clerk. Right?
We recommend 60 days in advance because there's so much that goes into events with permitting.
Right.
It really just depends. 30 days is good.
But we have the
60 days
permit
is
already.
better. Yeah. So, thank you. That's another type of expenditure a neighborhood council can make. So NPGs, CIPs, events, outreach, and operational costs, and in election years, elections costs. I just, not to harp on funding, but since I see it come up so often, trick question. If a neighborhood, if a nonprofit comes before you and they want an NPG for, say, whatever amount, just for the purpose of this example, $10, because they need to pay their rent, or they need to pay a staffer who is doing great things for the community, that's not going to fly. It has to be for a program, event, whatever, that is gonna benefit the public. You should always just, I guess what I'm trying to say, when a funding item comes before you, think about the benefit to the community and to the public and also what the neighborhood council's participation or recognition is going to be like in exchange or as part of that event. Just have that in the back of your mind. Correct. Okay, so most of you received this handout, 10 things to know as a neighborhood council board member. All the board members received it. I think everyone who's left from the public has one. So this is really, I'm not gonna bore you and read every word, but this document is yours to use, to reference, to look back at. And it kind of goes over your role as a neighborhood council board member, public participation, sort of defining it, and setting expectations, rules and policies that govern the neighborhood council system, the role of our department, City Government 101, running your neighborhood council meeting, communication skills and conflict management. I really encourage each and every person on this board to, if you're gonna read any chapter in this booklet, please read chapter 7, all of you. And sorry, I know it's late, but if we could just like cut the side conversations and just focus for the next 15 minutes, I would really, really appreciate that. Jason, any sum?
Yes.
Thank you. Bylaws, parliamentary procedures, and strategies for empowering your neighborhood. I was making the request that I know it's late and we're getting tired, but for the last 15 minutes, if I could just have your attention, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay,
Is
so.
that payback? We got.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's just, I was going over the table of contents here. And I do hope everyone in this room will read chapter 7, communication skills and conflict management.
Are you suggesting something?
This is the #1 issue for most of my boards, board dynamics issues and communication. We have a lot of passionate, caring, active folks in the community in one room with an opinion and a microphone. So let's all just expect the best of each other and of ourselves, please.
You got it.
Thank you. So our role as neighborhood council board members, we kind of went over it in your neighborhood council board oath, but kind of keeping in mind what it means to be a public servant, an elected official, and a representative of the community. So think for yourself, but act for the group is another way I like to put it. You're there to serve at the pleasure of the public, as am I. So anytime you're not pleased, just let me know, which you usually do, so thank you. So you're representatives of the community, you've been elected to this role, so you know it's a responsibility. Public participation, I think Porter Ranch does a great job, especially considering Aliso Canyon and all of the contentious issues that you have to deal with here. You do get a lot of community participation. You've had meetings where it's been standing room only, and I've seen you sort of time and time again really handle that. And I think, to my point earlier about board dynamics and communication, it's really important to run an effective meeting and to respect the process and the procedures, and that because that's what maintains order. So, like I've seen in other neighborhood councils where the person's time is up and like somebody keeps speaking and then someone else has to cut them off, and like you don't want to be rude and cut a person off, but at the same time, if you let every person have an extra minute, an extra 2, an extra 3, I've been at neighborhood council meetings till midnight. And that's just when I expired and I was like, I gotta go, like, y'all are gonna keep fighting till like 1 a.m, like, and they probably went further, than, you know what I mean? But I tapped out at midnight, so, you know, it just like, like, let's not. You know, you should ideally be able to conduct all of your business in an efficient and timely manner. Obviously, some things are gonna warrant more discussion than others. You might need more time to discuss that, but maintaining an orderly meeting is just gonna help you accomplish your goals. That's really what it's about. And hearing from the public is definitely important. And actually, when you adhere to the rules and you give everybody their 2 minutes or their 1 minute, you're ensuring that everybody gets equal participation instead of allowing the meeting to kind of fall off the rails. Yes?
You know, I have not been to another neighborhood council meeting, and I have not been to many, so it's not a criticism of everybody. But I don't see neighborhood councils giving the public the comment period on every motion
That's true.
before they vote on
I don't
it. And I don't know why Dunn allows that.
It is not allowed. You should have the public should have the opportunity to speak on each item on the agenda and during your public comment agendized item.
But you know it doesn't happen, so what is Dunn doing about that? And I'm serious, I mean, I'm putting on the spot because we either have a system or we don't have a system. And somebody has to care about this issue. And just because it happens and it's overwhelming to your staff, doesn't mean it's okay.
I agree with you. I can't speak for my colleagues. I can speak for our department's policy, which is that if we're there at a meeting and, for example, we see that that's not happening, that's when we would pipe up and say, excuse me, like, please take public comment on this agenda item, and every agenda item. I don't know. I'm not everywhere. I'm not at every neighborhood council meeting. I can only speak to the neighborhood councils that I oversee and support, and my neighborhood councils take public comment on each item. Yes.
And just one other thing that is a problem I see is people are not putting their agendas, their minutes online. There's a neighborhood council in the North Valley who doesn't have minutes dating back to 2000, like over a year. I can't find minutes on their meeting. And I've contacted Freedom of Information Act requests, and they said, and they're not responding. So what do you guys need to take that as a priority, the department. I think you should take that back, because it's not right, because we want to know what's going on in the community, and if we can't see the minutes, and we work really hard to get all our minutes up, Gabriel's always on it, and all the other neighborhood councils need to be following that, and you guys need to be enforcing it. So can you please take that back to Semi or whoever?
I will take that back. I will also point out that, as I mentioned before, your Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, they set policy for neighborhood councils. So the minutes posting policy is the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. And I'm saying your commissioners also need to be conscientious of putting mechanisms in place into these policies that enable us to enforce it and offer remedies if a neighborhood council isn't enforcing them, for example.
So maybe we should take our grievances to the commissioners.
You can consider that as an
Isn't
option.
that under your jurisdiction though, this neighborhood empowerment?
The Board of Neighborhood Commissioners sets policy.
The policy's set.
Right.
We know the policy, they're not following the policy.
Right. And so if a policy isn't being followed because there's nothing in that policy that's allowing us to enforce it.
Right now, the only key.
I thought this was an orientation, I didn't know it was to solve all the problems of all the neighborhoods.
Well, it could be.
We've only got like 5 more minutes. We're kind of off track.
Thank you.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Go ahead.
These poor people don't know anything about neighborhood councils. There's several of them here, and that's what we're here for till 9 o'clock to help them, not to solve all the world's problems.
We all go
I
off
got
track
here in 5
sometimes.
minutes, so nothing, don't get offended.
I shan't. Thank you. I've already been offended. I'm in a perpetual state of being offended. Okay, moving on. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. What rules and policies apply to the neighborhood council system? So from the top, federal laws like ADA, state laws, the Brown Act, the California Public Records Act. If you haven't been paying attention to me, please start now. So everything that you do as an elected official, you're subject to this act. This is the reason it's so important to have dedicated email to your Porter Ranch email. If somebody named Jasmine who lives across the street wants to PRA Public Records Act request, PRA, and say, hey, I want to see all emails on this topic from this date to this date, I can do that, and you must respond within, I believe, 10 days. There's a certain time frame. The city attorney will help you respond. It makes it a lot easier to respond to something like that if it's not commingled with your personal email where you have to redact a bunch of information, or your work email, which adds another needless layer of complexity. You are elected officials, which I again stress you should be conducting yourselves in a manner becoming of elected officials, and remind yourself that the things that you put in writing, even if you're just emailing one person back and forth, it's not complete, it might not stay private forever. So just be mindful about the things that you're saying, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about conflict management and communication. Like, we're all adults here, right? So don't be like talking about each other in the emails. Like, I see a lot of people laughing, but I've seen this with other boards a lot, where someone says something like not so nice about another person, and then it gets PRA'd, and then the person's feelings are hurt because they find out and they read it. Like, let's not be cyber bullies, let's just be neighborly and remember that we are subject to PRA requests. Yes.
We had our board, we had all of our emails, we had to provide all emails between board members. It was thousands of pages, so be very careful when you email about anybody.
Be neighborly.
That was awful.
And we should not commingle personal email addresses with PRNC addresses.
I really, really strongly urge you to just stick to your dedicated neighborhood council email address. And by the way, it applies to your text messages too. So I'm not telling you to get a cell phone separately for the NC. I'm just saying, be mindful of how you're talking about each other. And board business, this is part of public records, part of the Brown Act and conducting business in public. If you have like 5 board members on one email thread and you're discussing something, that's a violation of the Brown Act. It needs to be out in the open, and so this is also the reason, like, I really urge you to not reply all, or like BCC your recipients when you email them, so that you get the response, and that you're not, creating a serial that's what's called a serial communication via email. It applies to like a Facebook post too. So if you want to post neutral information, PRNC's meeting is on this date, here's the agenda, that's fine. But when you start getting into like discussion in the comment thread, that's when you start like heading toward a serial communication land, which is not a good place. Okay, city laws, the administrative code and the plan, and then these are some of the commissioners' policies that we were talking about earlier, like the minutes policy, agenda posting, grievance policy, and code of conduct. The city clerk sets the guidelines for elections and for the funding program. As a neighborhood council, you're responsible for your bylaws and your standing rules if you choose to have them. Not every neighborhood council has a set of standing rules. Standing rules are a little bit less formal than the bylaws. So bylaws go into moratorium. For example, right now they're in moratorium, which means you can't make any changes to them. The reason for that is because when the clerk takes your bylaws for the election cycles and prepares your ballots, if there were 99 of you making changes, it would be impossible to maintain. So right now the bylaws are in moratorium, but the bylaws are really the bread and butter of how your neighborhood council operates. So that's another document that you should familiarize yourself with. Standing rules can be set by the board, discussed, changed at any time. Bylaws have to be approved by our department. So again, that goes back to the moratorium thing, we're not accepting them. So even if you discussed it and made changes, we wouldn't be able to accept them right now anyway. And the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners also has a hand in approving or disapproving of parts of your bylaws when it comes to board structure and boundaries. So any board structure change, for example, we have 11 seats, we want to add another 2. That would require going before the commission and making a case for why you need more board seats or less or a different type of seat. And the same would go for your boundaries. For example, last year, North Hills West wanted to give part of its boundaries to North Ridge West wanted to give part of its boundaries to North Ridge East. So they would have to go to the commission and say, oh, this part of the boundaries has always felt like they belong to North Ridge East and da-da-da-da. Parliamentary procedure, this really is just to help you run an effective meeting. As I said before, you do a great job with that, but it's always good to familiarize yourselves with these. Robert's Rules of Order or Rosenberg's, which is a little more simplified, but it's really just sort of, I'd like to make a motion, can I get a second? It's kind of like teaching you the importance of parliamentary procedure. What's the role of the department? To implement and oversee compliance with city ordinances and regulations, provide operational support to you all, assist you with whatever you need assistance with, outreach, and more. So please take a look in your spare time. I know you can't wait to get home and shower, get in bed, and some light reading for everything I didn't get to cover. City Government 101. I just think this is cool, so I'm going to point it out. City of LA is a mayor council commission form of government. A lot of other cities, like New York, for example, are very like top down, like you just do what the mayor says and that's the way it is. Because we're tough and we're New Yorkers and it's cold out. In LA, we're like a little more collaborative, I like to think. So this kind of goes back into the public comment that I was discussing earlier and community impact statements. I also, for anyone who just would like, can think of nothing better, provide like a really in-depth training on council file management system. So anytime anybody wants that, let me know. We'll sit down for an hour and go through it. Running your first neighborhood council meeting, you've already done that successfully as a board twice, so well done. Also, just to point out, all 99 neighborhood councils, like, the bylaws might all be different. I'm sure I could probably find two that are exactly this, or very close or very similar, but they're really all different. And so something great about Porter Ranch, I think, is that it's staggered. A lot of neighborhood councils are staggered, and so that means that you don't have an entirely new board coming in. Well, usually, in some years, you don't have an entirely new board coming in, which helps because then you retain some of that institutional knowledge. But we do have, sample agenda templates and scripts. You guys all have your agenda template in place, but, every agenda has some required language, like for ADA compliance or, translation, something I didn't touch on, which is also very important. So I know in Porter Ranch, from looking at your demographic data, you have like a large Korean population. So if there are Korean folks who are monolingual and need translation for your meetings, that's something that you would have to provide, and that's something that is allocated for in your budget, right? That would come out of your operational expenses. So somebody would make the request and you would have a Korean interpreter available for those speakers, or any language, Spanish, but I'm just talking about what's relevant to you. Communication skills and conflict management. So yeah, it's just really important to respect the roles. This says to respect the role of the chair and the president, but it's really important to respect everybody's role and to kind of just remember what we learned in kindergarten, give everybody their time to speak, obtain the floor prior to speaking. I think that's something that can help smooth things over a lot. I know in the past when neighborhood council meetings have gotten overrun with one person who really dominates the conversation, or who's always getting cut off and they feel like, hey, why is this person targeting me? I was just trying to make a point. Yeah, but I can't let you make a point for 15 minutes and then everybody else only gets 30 seconds to speak. So applying the rules evenly is very helpful, and that's why I'm a fan of something that can't be argued with, like time. So I think it's really great that you set the timer and you show the person, you have 2 minutes to speak, and then they can see it right in front of them, and that way it removes sort of that feeling of oh, I'm being targeted or unfairly, shut down. Let's show appreciation to each other. I know I was saying earlier, be neighborly, but I really do mean it. Try to find shared interests. You're all here because you care about the community. I know there are a lot of contentious issues in this community. Well, one very big contentious issue, but there are other problems as well, right? And so you're all here because you want to make a difference and do something great. And I think appreciating that in each other and looking for the best in each other really goes a long way. Staying positive, listening, maintaining an open mind. Yeah, nonverbal cues like body language are super important. So if you're sitting up there and one of your board members is talking to you and you're texting the whole time, like, that's rude. It's like, you would feel that way with a friend at lunch. So it's kind of the same thing at a meeting. Just treating people with respect and requesting feedback is always great. So I think I heard somebody earlier say, oh, I think what you're saying is, or like, just to clarify, and that's really helpful because it shows the person that you're listening. I think also ownership is super important and taking accountability. So it's great when we discuss something like a community impact statement. And let's say you have 5 authorized filers on your board, and now we just need to know who's actually going to log in and submit it. You would not believe how many neighborhood councils have this problem. They discuss the entire community impact statement, they come up with their position on it, someone writes it, it gets approved, we're so close, and then, I never signed in and submitted it. I forgot. I thought you were gonna do it. No, you told me you were. And it just it slips through the cracks, and it's very, very unfortunate. So taking ownership is really important. After a discussion, just say, hey, okay, so just to be clear, I'm gonna be the one to do this. And then trusting that person to carry that out is really important as well. As I said, your bylaws, bread and butter, familiarize yourself with them. And I've talked to this board about this before, but your bylaws are very thin. They're silent on a lot of things where they could be more clear. So I really am, again, going to urge you when the moratorium lifts to prioritize really beefing up your bylaws. And I'm happy to help you through that process when the time comes. Parliamentary procedure, again, I kind of went over that, but here's an outline in case you need help. And I had to learn all of this too, so I think, I just think it's helpful to have it in front of you. You could, practice it, but most of you are familiar, and you see also how the board runs. And then empowering your neighborhood through outreach, organizing. I think it kind of makes me a little sad at retreats. I always see like, okay, let's talk about the budget, let's talk about all the things that we want to accomplish this year, and then the outreach plan is sometimes an afterthought, and I think that's just kind of an opportunity missed. That's just sort of a general thing. I think Porter Ranch has done a lot of great things around outreach that I haven't seen many other NCs do in my experience. So like, for example, you did the mailer. I think that was really great. You touched how many mailboxes in your community? Over 1,000?
Oh, we sent to 7,000. About 6,000, something like that.
6,000 mailboxes. That's pretty great. And you got feedback from your neighbors about what was important to them. And so that's definitely part of your outreach plan, but I just urge you to prioritize that in your retreat. It's very tempting to get caught up in the minutia of the budget, but your budget is also going to change because you don't know who's going to come up in your community, or like you have a really drought intense year and you need more money for trees or whatever it's going to be. So your budget might change, but your outreach should always be a priority. Yes. Oh, time. Okay. So that's essentially it. You have this material to go over. You also have me as a resource. I'm happy to go over anything that you need further clarification on. My office is in Van Nuys, so you can also come down or I can come to you. I know you're really excited for that council file management system training, but yeah, like I really am happy to walk you through it and show you how it works if that's something that you want or need. Always here to answer questions. I actually won't be at your May meeting because I'm going to be in New Orleans. So one of my colleagues will likely, thank you for the clap, yes. So one of my colleagues will hopefully be able to attend, but in the interim, like reach out with questions and then see you in June. Okay. Thanks for your attention. I know that was a lot.
It was great.
Without further discussion, may I adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn? Second? Okay. Meeting adjourned.